6:30, I'm going to call this study session of Littleton City Council to order. All of council is present tonight. We've got 3 items on the agenda. First up, we're going to talk about manufactured housing community policy considerations here for council, and then we have a discussion on Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan, and then Public Works and Utilities Department overview. But first, we're going to chat about manufactured housing communities policy here. You know that we have our friends from Meadowood in the audience there. We've been talking a lot to us recently here and trying to figure out how we can, how or if we can play a role in this. I know staff's been doing a lot of research and conversations with other partners to figure out what the city could potentially do to help. So I'll turn it over to Jim and talk.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council, and also good evening to our colleagues and partners with South Metro Housing Options. I'll let Arturo introduce his board members when he gives his part of the presentation tonight. I'll also say that I'm going to try to speak loudly tonight, so please don't hesitate to put your hand up if you can't hear me tonight. So I'll try to set that tone. Before we kind of get into the meat of it, just a little perspective. We feel that this policy issue and the specific requests that we're going to talk about tonight is really reflective of the larger housing crisis in the metro area. Land and housing values have risen dramatically, with rents being increased to cover new owners' borrowing costs and the cost of aging infrastructure. Corey Ritz, the executive director of SMHO, who's not with us tonight, says that the request to assist renters with remaining in their homes due to increasing rents is increasingly common for Littleton, and that SMHO receives inquiries from renters for help and also periodically considers opportunities to purchase existing market rate housing to expand our affordable housing inventory. So this predicament, outside of the manufactured home specific context, is very unfortunately common, and one that our community and surrounding communities are facing and will continue to face. The city has been aware of private sector transactions in the works that would transfer ownership of both the Woolhurst and the Meadowood Village mobile home parks in our community. And that has understandably caused great concern on the part of park residents about potentially unmanageable lot rent increases. The city has been asked specifically to assist residents of the Meadowood community with buying the property on which their homes are located. Even though we're talking about Meadowwoods specifically mostly tonight, I think council should be, aware and kind of have the context that this really would be housing preservation policy that would have implications for other properties probably in our community. So it really could mark the expansion of city services into housing preservation, which would be consistent with council's goals. But it wouldn't have the benefit at this point of an intentional strategy or an existing funding source. Since the Meadowood residents made their request, staff has been researching the ins and outs of how we could assist financially. You will hear that we do not advise providing the $2.6 million grant or subsidy, as the term is used, as originally requested. However, we have identified an affordable and feasible approach to assist financially if the council is inclined to do so. Last week, staff met with Meadowood residents and briefed them on the options staff has outlined in your agenda materials. We also assured them that we understand the severity of housing consequences they have articulated, and that regardless of whether the council decides it's in the city's best interest to help financially, we will assist in supporting legislation at the state level to help control housing costs, and we will identify grants along the way that could be beneficial to that cause. With all of that preamble, I'm going to now introduce Julie Latham, the city's housing policy analyst, who will provide an overview of our context and the options that we're considering tonight.
Thanks, Jim. Good evening, everyone. So we'll just kind of go over some of the background info on the communities, the funding requests, the options that Jim kind of mentioned, and some of the other considerations.
You speak louder, Julie.
Okay, sorry. I am a quiet speaker. I'll do my best.
You want to slide over here where you're
Maybe.
kind of facing them?
Okay.
Gotta get that.
Yeah, okay, so as you're aware, Littleton currently has 2 manufactured home parks. Woolhurst Adult Community is located at Santa Fe and County Line. There are 301 manufactured.
Julie, pardon me, I would invite audience members, we can place some chairs up in this area, which might give you a little closer proximity to the speaker, if that's helpful to you.
Sure. Next chair. Gather around. You guys want chocolate? I know that's why.
We need a chocolate
You can
bar,
have a
don't
chocolate.
we? My goodness.
Yeah. Congrats. Okay. You know where it is. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Anytime. Feel free to reach up and grab some.
Okay.
Thank you.
See if this is better. So Woolhurst has 301 housing lots. It's age restricted to 55 and up. It is zoned multifamily residential with a planned overlay.
I can hear, but she can't. She's new to the chambers, and so I'm gonna speak up for her.
Thanks, Johnny. We'll do our best.
Do you think you can stand up, please, and
I wonder if I stood, I do stand up. Maybe if I shout.
there you go.
Okay, good, okay. So Meadowwood Village is located off of Santa Fe and Brewery Lane. It has 92 manufactured housing lots. It's also age restricted to 55 and up. It's zoned multifamily residential and has a floodplain overlay. State law requires that manufactured home communities provide a 120-day notice to mobile homeowners of any sale. That law also provides residents an opportunity to organize as a resident-owned community and have the opportunity to purchase the park in the event of a sale. Woolhurst received that notice of sale in August. Meadowwood received it in January. On the Woolhurst front, after residents received that notification of sale, they reached out to the city and asked for help. The city fielded calls. There was concern that the property might be redeveloped. The city attorney was able to reach out and confirm that the intention was to continue operating the community as a manufactured housing community. But then we then heard concerns about maybe potential rising rents, as well as the company potentially having a reputation for trying to place people into newer manufactured homes, and the concerns of a community that is potentially income restricted and living in some older homes. So we provided information to residents and connected them with, the state resources, as well as, the nonprofits that are working in that space. We understand that the residents organized, formed a resident-owned community, and worked with Thistle, who's a nonprofit working in that space, and organized to make an offer to purchase the park, which was subsequently rejected by the seller. Then a change in the terms of the purchase agreement required a reissue notice and a restart of the 120-day notification period. So when we met with Woolhurst residents several weeks ago, they advised that their new deadline to make another offer to purchase the park is June 21st. Meadowwood received their notification in January, and they reached out to the city, again, for information, asking for help just in general. We, again, directed them to the state programs, the nonprofits in the space. They ended up working with Thistle. They formed a co-op and worked to, they are working to work with Thistle to create an offer to purchase the park. They formally requested money from the city, in which this slide kind of outlines the background on that. So there is a June 18th deadline to make an offer. The Residents are requesting subsidized funding, in part to keep lot rents affordable for them. There are two different structures to the request that they have made. One is in the form of a grant or forgivable loan. These amounts are what are requested in that format. So they've requested $4.6 million from the Department of Local Affairs, $2.8 million from Arapahoe County, $2.6 million from the city. The other option that was proposed was to help provide assistance with some earnest money of $275,000. So $200,000 of that would be an earnest money deposit. $75,000 would go towards pre-purchase expenses. What that does is then unlocks the due diligence period for them to kind of work to continue to develop financing and funding and subsidy periods. Portions of that earnest money are refundable to the city, and there are some different structures that Jim will talk about further in a little bit for how that works and what that could look like. So throughout the process of doing all of this research, we identified about 4 different options that we could take a look at to address some of the concerns of the situation. So funding, obviously, the first right of refusal, which is an option that the state laws provide us, rent subsidies, as well as housing and land use policy. I'll turn it over to Jim to talk
Jump in
about
from there.
funding.
Thank you. One note on the last slide. We do not have specific recommendations on potential land use policy. We know the council could be interested in that in a future affordable housing discussion. We think that the whole topic of housing preservation and affordable housing land use will be quite a meaty one. So that's one that we want to just recognize tonight that we don't have specific recommendations on. So to recap, we had 2 financial assistance requests. The first was for $2.6 million of that subsidy, and the other was for $275,000, which has 2 components. The first component is $200,000 of earnest money and $75,000 of pre-development or due diligence costs, things like engineering services, financial services, the kinds of things that it would take for the for Thistle Rock and Rock USA, the ultimate loan funding agency, to actually determine if this project should move forward. I'll mention one note on the $275,000. That would only be needed if the residents' competing offer was accepted by the property owner or the seller. So that's an important kind of timing caveat on these. So for the city to participate financially, there are really just a couple funding sources that we think that staff feel could be used. The first, which we think would be the ideal one, would be the affordable housing fund that we have, and that's funded by the inclusionary housing ordinance fees in lieu that council established about 1.5 years ago. So those are the fees that would be paid by developers in lieu of building affordable housing.
Where's that coming from? Which projects do you?
We have, I'll tell you, we could get those specifics if you'd like, but when we did those original projections, we had outlined approximately $5 million of funding from the projects that we know about. Things like
There are no revenues right now.
Evergreen
That's
and
the
Toll.
point. Yeah, any future development.
Right, but you're
So we have
projecting.
about $5 million that we think will come in over the next 5 to 7 years. No funding, no revenue has been collected is the point on this fund. And council has pledged the first $400,000 to come in through that source to assist with a land purchase that South Metro Housing Options is already pursuing. So we believe that those will come in soon, but the point is we don't have any funding for affordable housing at this point, identified, appropriated, anything like that. Other source would be the city's general fund, which the council can always allocate for any governmental purpose. But we'll note that that fund is our guarantor, as it were, for all of our general fund services, things like police, public works, community development, all the services that the city has are funded with general fund. And our main source there is sales tax, which is currently lagging projections in a rather uncertain economy. And you know, that general fund backstop for city services is always our priority. And we currently don't have any funding for housing subsidy or housing programs, certainly in our general funds. It would mean using reserves that are really in place for those basic services set by council, by policy, so that we can meet any economic fluctuations that come our way. So the point there is that the city, that we currently don't have any funding earmarked available for housing services or housing subsidy to purchase property. I think that's the point on this slide. A few other things. I think Julie, who's certainly done the research on these things, will tag team a little bit, and you can touch on these policy options.
Sure, so as mentioned, there is an option for the first right of refusal, which is the assignment for the preservation of long-term affordable housing. What that means though is Littleton would need to be ready.
Can you speak louder, please?
I'm doing my best, Pam.
Please.
It will provide a, sorry, let me back up. It provides the right to assign the right to purchase the property to the city or a housing authority. That contract, though, you have to be prepared to purchase and operate the park. Everything you want to do with that park, you need to have all of that outlined as part of those pieces. So there would be a great deal of work involved in accepting the assignment on this piece because you need to know how you're going to fund it and how you're going to operate the park and what that is going to look like. Another option that we reviewed is rent control or rent subsidy. Rent control is not permitted in Colorado, so that is not a viable option for a city to come in and do any of that. Arapahoe County does offer a rental assistance program, so those are potential avenues for funding or assistance. We did kind of take a look at, you know, how are these run, what are the potential options, and really the running those through the county and that they have a program seems to be a good route. And also to Jim's earlier point, we do not have any funding available to establish such a program. Other potential funding sources, as mentioned, Arapahoe County has been involved in these conversations. They are also limited on their resources. They have a lot of their funds allocated for the year. There's not a lot of additional funds readily available. However, for this case, they did approve $50,000 to go towards the earnest money for Meadowood. There are also programs through the state. There's the Transformational Housing Loan Fund, as well as Proposition 123. Proposition 123 has a mobile home program. It is newly established. They are going to be accepting applications starting July 1st. It's anticipated there's $10 to $15 million in funding estimated for the program. It's unclear at this point how much demand for those funds there are going to be. And much like many other Proposition 123 programs, some of those pieces are kind of still evolving what that is going to look like. But that is funding that is meant to be available for acquisition and infrastructure components for manufactured home communities. And that funding can be up to $50,000 per unit.
Is that grants or loans?
1, 2, 3 loan, I believe, but I would have to confirm that. I'll confirm that.
I think it's a loan at a lower interest rate.
Yes.
It's a revolving fund.
I think it's a low interest rate. I would need to double check. Again, they're just established the guidelines for it. Then on the federal basis, congressionally directed spending is also an option and was pursued. The other new piece through HUD is the Preservation and Reinvestment Initiative for Community Enhancement. That's a competitive grant program through HUD, and they created it in recognition of the unique challenges that manufactured home communities face. The intention is to preserve and revitalize the communities. There's $235 million available, with grants ranging from $5 to $75 million. The deadline to apply for that is July 10th. It's been extended twice.
But not awarded until when? I think that was one of the things we discussed earlier on.
And I would need to
I
check
thought that
on
was
that
late
as well.
summer, early
It's a while.
fall is when that was gonna get awarded, so I think that timeframe wasn't gonna match up with our concerns here.
And so with that, I will turn over to South Metro Housing Options, Arturo Fuentes, to talk about their preservation strategies and work in this space.
Thank you, Julie. My name is Arturo Fuentes. I'm the real estate manager at South Metro Housing Options. With me, I have Kate Peterson, our newly appointed board chair, and Pat Cronenberger. Yes, so just to give everyone a bigger understanding of South Metro Housing Options' mission, we are interested in providing affordable housing options to the community. That is in both preservation and newly developed homes in our portfolio. Our strategy as part of the agency has been the repositioning of a public housing portfolio of 59 homes. We partnered with Habitat for Humanity to renovate those homes and put them and make them permanently affordable for the community for sale. It's been a program that has been very successful, and we're very happy with our partnership with Habitat for Humanity. Some of the proceeds of that program is going to fund not only the development of new affordable units within the city limits, but also to fund capital improvements in our existing properties that we have as well. And as you can see from that development pipeline, since 2021, we've been very focused, in adding new units into the market in Littleton. So on top of those 59 unit homes that have been a conversion from public housing to permanently affordable homes for sale for the community, we've been focused as well in developing new affordable units through the low-income housing tax credit program. This whole project, or I guess vision for development, started back in 2021 when through Section 22 we repositioned the public housing portfolio that I just mentioned, and then finally earlier this year in January of 2024 we opened Overlook at Powers Park, which is our newest development in 30 years in the community. It's comprised of 51 units for seniors that was built through the low-income housing tax credit program. Since then, we've successfully submitted an application for 9% tax credits, and I'm actually very happy to let everyone know here that as of Friday, we were awarded those tax credits. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Great news, not only for the community, but for everyone that got involved. So thank you, council, and thank you everyone that was involved in making that project a successful pitch. Now we have the task of getting it across the finish line. So
which parcel would that be? Rep or?
that's on RAP.
That is Rep, okay. Great.
And so, as you can tell, we have development momentum that we'd like to continue. Our goal is to every year submit one application for the low-income housing tax credit program, which is a highly competitive and highly restrictive program. This program funds both new development and acquisition rehab, which is one of the options in which we can acquire and preserve existing affordable units in the market. Last thing that I can say on our preservation strategy is the only project within the last 10, 15 years that we've been able to acquire and preserve is Power Circle, not too far from where that aerial picture is taken. Power Circle is a collection of 3 buildings totaling 66 units. That was an acquisition of an existing project to preserve those units as affordable. And so it was an incredibly, I was not around at the time, but from what I hear, it was an incredibly complicated acquisition. And the acquisition of that property, it's a project that is from the 1970s, doesn't have amenities, doesn't have a lot of things that other, not only market rate, but affordable properties that are being newly constructed have. So although we're very focused on preserving as many units in the market as we can, more often than not, preserving them is more complicated than creating new.
And if I could just add one thing regarding the time pipeline that's shown here, because I'm the longest serving SMHO board member now, so I go back 7 years and have served on the real estate committee since being appointed to SMHO. And I will tell you, the few years before 2021, before that pipeline starts, we spent a lot of time thrashing about in our monthly meetings about how to make those projects happen. It took a lot of work, but we were also entertaining other projects that were housing preservation projects. And Arturo's predecessor was often making phone calls to find out when he would learn of a property, especially a multifamily rental property that was for sale. But these properties were often extremely expensive. As you can imagine, we're in a very tight housing market and most sellers want to make as much money as they can. We couldn't make them pencil, let alone figure out how to do any kind of repair and maintenance to them. And in some cases, some property owners wouldn't return our phone calls, or they simply did not want to sell to us as SMHO. So I just want you to know that before that pipeline started, we were very neutral about how we considered projects, whether it was new construction or existing properties.
Let me ask some questions. So I just want to kind of summarize kind of what I heard. And I'm not being antagonistic, but there's going to be some stupid questions. So South Metro Housing Authority is our local tool for making, or for one of our tools for supporting affordable housing in our community. Is that correct? And your board is really important to setting the direction of your organization, but we are also important to setting the direction, that you guys listen to what we have to say. And I mean that in a good way, right? We help set your direction. So if we chose to ask you guys to do something different, we have the authority to encourage you to change your kind of policy direction.
Well, let me give a little context
Thank
to
you.
that, Robert, because we were deeply involved in the drafting of the current comp plan, which adopted the housing recommendations of the Housing Task Force, which was a joint city and SMHO effort. So we are very much, I mean, obviously, we're gonna accomplish a whole lot more when we are in sync and working together. So what we're doing is very much in sync with the comprehensive plan.
Great. So we have tools to influence how you behave, or that's not the right word, your policy direction. And the policy direction you're taking right now reflects collaboration between the city and you guys. We've worked together, and your primary strategy for maintaining affordable housing in our region right now is to buy property and build new affordable property. Once you've kind of cleared your portfolio of the homes you owned. That's your current strategy.
I would say that is correct to a certain degree.
Okay.
The current strategy is, yes, to add additional affordable housing units through development. We don't shy away from acquisition of existing affordable housing units when we can make them pencil.
And,
Power circle.
yeah, but your main way of financing these things, the city contributes funds. We contributed some funds, I think, for Rapp Street to help with that purchase. But most of your funds for these things come through LIHTC, right?
That is the primary vehicle that we
Right,
use to
that's
develop new
your
affordable.
primary, and I assume, kind of what is your on-ramp? How long does it take you to go from kind of identifying, something you wanna purchase and actually being able to make the purchase?
It'll take anywhere between 12 to 18 months.
Well, which we don't have in this current situation.
And I just wanted to clarify, it's not just our primary vehicle. Tax credit, low-income housing tax credit is the primary vehicle to finance affordable housing.
Right, okay. Well,
I just wanted to make
No, no,
sure
I-
that was clear for
No, that's
everybody.
fantastic. I just think it's important to kind of establish that we have a housing authority. We work with you cooperatively. We have a strategy for adding to the housing that really involves using LIHTC funds, external funds, to kind of leverage what we put on the table to grow the low-income housing in our area. And the direction that we're considering is, what do we do about this purchase? And that right now isn't part of your strategy, but we have a good enough relationship that if we wanted to change strategies, we could work on that, although this is not a battleship that's going to turn on a dime. Is that all fair? I'm just trying to establish the context of how we do low-income housing
Yeah.
in Littleton. And I appreciate your work. I'm just trying to set the stage.
If I can clarify, they don't answer to us. We're partnership, right?
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I just wanna make sure you understand that they're not one of our boards, they're their own board.
appoint them.
Yes and no, they're
Yes and
an
no.
autonomous authority, we do appoint them, and I mean,
But it's
Collaboration.
a collaboration. I appreciate that, Patrick. I think you're right. It's not a hierarchy. You're not under us. You're beside us, and we have ways to influence you, but you also do really great work, and we really appreciate it, right? So, all right, I just want to kind of establish that as a context of where we are, because I'll be honest with you, I feel like, the Meadowwood and Woolhurst, we have lots of affordable housing. Our big challenge is, how do we maintain it? And we have this question of, could we build our way through it?
I don't think that's accurate. I don't think we have enough affordable housing.
We have more affordable housing than any community kind of from our level south. Going from here south, we have more affordable housing than anybody. Maybe we want more, but I'm not confident we're in a place where we can maintain the affordable housing that we have going forward.
In terms of subsidy?
If anything, just how do we do it? I think that's our bigger challenge that I hope we work on over the next year.
that's a bigger conversation.
Absolutely, it's not what we should be talking about right now, but I'm just saying, I'm worried about that.
So let's move on to the next slide.
It's the last slide.
Thank you. So bring it back to Meadowwood. We talked about staff's recommendation is that without a housing preservation plan or strategy, without that kind of strategy, without designated funding for it, now's not the time. We don't have funding to help with the $2.6 million subsidy that would help purchase the property most readily for the residents. However, in conversations, in learning a lot from Thistle Home Housing Communities, the nonprofit in the metro area, and talking with the Meadowwood residents, we've learned that they are very optimistic about the grants that are still available, that could really be available, even if the county and the city do not have subsidy to help with the purchase. I know the residents have done learning. Thistle was working with them also to attract those grants, but it's gonna take a little more time. So we do have an option for council that we think is responsible, feasible, affordable, that would help to buy them additionally 90 days or so to identify those funds and, see if there's a deal to be had. And I'm gonna talk through some of the mechanics, but the bottom line, as we understand it, would be that it would really cost the city about a net $25,000. Here's how that would work. You start with $275,000 of total need for earnest money and pre-development due diligence costs. In conversations with the county, and the county Board of Commissioners has committed $50,000 that they've said could go along with $25,000 from the city toward those pre-development costs. Those are most likely, we should assume that those are costs, that they will be spent in this 90-day period of due diligence. Although they've said that if they get to a point and those funds, the due diligence period's over, they haven't spent the funds, those would be returned to the city and the county. So that's this
Arapahoe giving a grant,
$75,000 would be a grant.
50,000 from Arapahoe.
Right.
50,000 from
That's the
Arapahoe's a
county.
grant,
I
not a
think
loan.
the city currently has a local partnership fund mechanism, a program that we have each year, and we could increase the budget by $25,000 for that program, local partnership funds, to make that grant to Thistle for those pre-development costs. The rest of the $275,000, which is $200,000, could also be a grant. The city, staff would recommend that we manage this through that affordable housing fund, where those IHO funds will be coming, but that the city's general fund could advance some funding to that, to $200,000 to that fund. And from that fund, we could make a grant for that earnest money amount.
Forgivable loan.
Yes, forgivable loan. I think in our parlance, it could be a grant. They've been calling it a forgivable loan. In either case, the effect would be that those funds, $200,000 from the city, would be held in escrow in this real estate transaction as it potentially proceeds toward the closing, when the residents would take ownership of the property. We've been assured by Thistle in several conversations, the city attorney and I, that the $200,000 could be refunded to the city in either scenario. Either the sale proceeds to closing, and I'm gonna let Reed speak to this in a moment. Either the sale proceeds to closing, or they make their way through the due diligence period and the residents decide that there's really not the funding that they had hoped. We have been assured that that money could be refunded to the city. So to finish kind of how this package would work, I'll just say those two components, the two grants from the city, one for $25,000, one for $200,000, $200,000 that we believe we could get back, would be the way that the city could help effectively buy some time for the other grants to be brought to fruition. I think that the point about the $200,000 is important enough that I'm gonna pause and ask the city attorney, Reed Bensing, to just comment on how that could work.
And
Because it's-
before Reed chimes in, I just wanna say, this is also contingent on the seller
Yes.
accepting the offer. If the seller says, no, thank you, this all goes away, it doesn't matter.
Right.
What is the likelihood that the seller would accept?
I don't know,
So,
I don't know.
hard to speculate for us.
It could be another competing buyer who offers a whole heck of a lot more money.
We know that Woolhurst, for instance, went through a similar process several months ago, and their offer was declined by the seller. So that happens. It's hard for us to handicap what that chance would be.
My understanding was because it was so much easier to take it from this other buyer than go through the hoops that they would have to go through to buy from the residents.
Yeah, it's a hurdle, so we don't know if we're gonna run into the hurdle and fall down, or are they gonna jump over the hurdle? Don't know.
Yeah, I'd say, the property owner in this case would have a duty to consider that in good faith. And there's a lot of things that normally as a seller that, you would, or excuse me, yeah, as a seller that you would be able to kind of move on from. So date to close would be something, you as an individual property owner, you'd be curious about that. How someone was obtaining financing, whether or not financing was gonna come through. Pursuant to state law, those are actually considerations that a property owner can't take into consideration. So, when a property owner is evaluating, the offer to purchase, there's a lot of things that normally a private buyer or seller would consider that they could not. So I can't tell you what happened in the Woolhurst situation. My understanding was that they had offered a similar purchase amount, and for some reason that fell through. So, but to the question, I don't know whether or not the property owner would accept that. So that is up to them. I don't have a ton to add to the 200,000. I think you've done a great job kind of laying the framework.
You believe that through the contracts that you, because we've asked questions, you would have access to those contractual documents, be able to get as much surety as we can that the city's funds would be refunded under either scenario, and that you're confident that could happen.
Correct, and in addition, that 75,000 that we've talked about for the pre-development costs, and you've spoken to some, we're talking about appraisals, things like that. If for some reason the deal did not go through at an early point in time and those monies had not been spent, we could actually receive a portion of those funds back as well.
That's the $75,000 in due
Correct.
diligence. So the 200,000 is just like an escrow account, a check sitting waiting to either earn its money, and the other money's being spent down.
And I will
The
just note,
75,000 you would probably spend.
Depending on how far it goes, but yeah, I think for council's consideration, you should assume that money is not coming back.
and I will note that Michelle Halstead of the County Commissioner's Office is here in the audience, and she also has pointed out that the county has said that they're willing to do the appraisals that might be needed, pro bono to help the community. Yes. Just as a note.
She hasn't made it now.
So can I summarize what I think I heard Reed say? In good faith means legally they cannot take into account timeline or other fine points if they match in price. We think that means the seller should accept it, or it doesn't matter.
Correct, I would say the penalties that exist at state law for a property owner, I guess, not considering in good faith are kind of up in the air. I don't know if the Department of Justice has ever gone after one of these property owners for failing to consider that.
But that's what happened with Wolfers.
It's more complicated.
No, that had to do with some change in the purchase of sale, which re-triggered the 120 days notice, so.
And this is an unknown that I don't think we should really speculate on
In public.
about that, of what happened for either Woolhurst or this going forward. So I think this is just to focus on, here's the option that staff has recommended that might work to be able to do this.
Jim, you mentioned you approached the potential buyers about their intentions, not to redevelop it. Can you speak to anything about the increase in rents? That's part of their plan.
I can't, really have not had any conversation with them about that, and I it's likely that in either case, regardless of who purchases the property, rents will likely be higher. If all the grant funding that is envisioned comes to pass, the residents believe that the rent increase can be more manageable. But we don't know.
And this is to buy time to see if they can get more funding to help with that subsidy, because they could buy it outright, but the rent, when you take out a mortgage, you gotta pay it off, and so that's the rent, so it's gonna be really expensive. So it's just about buying time to be able to find some of those other those grants to subsidize the purchase price. And if those don't come through, either they purchase it and the rents will go up a lot, or not.
Everyone's cost of living goes up,
Yeah.
right? Property taxes, insurance for everybody, so it'll go up.
I agree, but I think in terms of equity, when you think of a renter versus a homeowner, the homeowner recoups, yes, they pay that increase in property tax, but they recoup that when they sell their property. A renter does not have that same guarantee, and I don't think those two are equitable.
Which is why a manufactured housing community is such a different beast, because they own their home but not the land. So, it's complicated.
Jim or Reed, do we know if the HOA has any skin in the game as far as financially?
Who?
The HOA
The cooperative.
Cooperative?
What are they?
Well, they're accepting the
I mean,
loan, right?
They'll be the ones that'll, yeah.
I'm talking about in this first stage here,
Not-
extending the,
Not capital investment.
no capital investment.
They each had to pay $25, every one in the community, to be a part of it at the
Oh.
meeting I was at Bemis.
Sorry.
So, I
You're
don't know
right.
if that's part of them renaming and
What's that?
picking their board was that, but that's all I'm aware.
That's some skin.
So, I mean, I've obviously talked to the city manager, city attorney several times about this. And so I think, I mean, it's clear that the large subsidy that they ask from the city isn't in our budget. We don't have the funds to do that. That would, endanger our services for the broader community. And so trying to figure out some way that we could help out, for a minimum of or roughly about $25,000, I think that would, to see if they can, just basically to buy time would be a reasonable thing that we can do here. And so I think this is a good recommendation.
I agree. I have always said I wanted a housing preservation strategy, and I wanted that to be part of a priority for our city. This is something at least we can do, but I wouldn't approve anything like this unless I had a guarantee that we're gonna work this into our priorities for next year. Housing preservation, not only a strategy, but a fund to be able to develop it. Right now, we've kind of said the county is doing a lot of that. The county rental programs that they have are passed through the federal government. So to my knowledge, I don't think there is, and maybe you could speak, okay, thank you for validating that. We don't have our community coming together to help support people who are struggling with rents. I think that is something our city should look into, and I want that.
Our city, not SMHO.
I think it should be, and I've emailed with Kate.
Or
I
you
think-
tell us what you would need in order to develop something more robust. Because like Robert had pointed out, the strategy has been we're gonna build new units, and there's been a little bit of emphasis on preservation, and I understand that's to some extent coming from HUD, that's their model as well. But we still have so many rental properties that are increasing and going up. And as the only renter on our city council, I think this is 42% of our community.
So, I mean, I think, I appreciate your point, and I look forward to that conversation, and I think we need to, I look forward to kind of having what is the cheapest strategy for us to keep affordable housing in the community, and I think.
It's cost effective.
Thank you, the most cost-effective strategy, and right now, through our contributions to the Housing Authority, they're able to leverage that through the LIHTC funds, and so they're able to, increase the overall investment. But I think that's an important conversation. I look forward to having it.
And we're a little bit removed. As Corey had stated, there are calls daily for people who need rental assistance, but we on this council are not hearing those calls,
You're right.
right? And I think having that conversation is going to elevate what kind of number you are getting of those people who are in dire, straits. We see a little bit of it at the county as well, in terms of their wait lists and things like that. So the need is absolutely there.
And and this is for a different conversation later, but I think when you say preservation, preservation means something different when they're talking about buying a existing unit, and I think when you're saying preservation, I'd love to see SMHO to take a look at a non-ownership, non-purchase preservation policy that SMHO does. I don't know what it looks like, but it's something that maybe isn't, because you deal with all the properties you own, that's what you deal with right there. It's not other properties that other people live in or other people own. And I think that's where Councilmember Ryan's getting in. And I think it should be in the Housing Authority because we don't have a Human Services Department. That's something that the city is not capable right now of taking on. And I think it would.
We do have the brilliant Julie, who is a policy person, and I think could lend your expertise to help us with that. Absolutely, reviewing preservation and affordable for sale is on the document.
And lending that to South Metro Housing Options as well.
So to the question
You
at,
make a good point, Kyle, because there's, preservation doesn't when housers are talking about preservation, it's keeping existing stock, existing housing rental affordable. And what I hear you saying, Gretchen, is tenant assistance. Yeah, those are two separate
different.
things.
And so I think back to the question at hand, does council have any comments or questions about the recommendation to move forward with this two-part, $275,000 support package?
I like the recommendation, appreciate everybody's work.
Yeah, I think it's a good recommendation. I would just caution council, we got out of the landlord business, with Geneva Village, and I would recommend we not get back in the landlord business.
I think this recommendation sticks with
I understand.
Who will be the go-to person for, that slide you had of the state grants and federal grants? Is that Thistle that's going to own that, or the cooperative? Are we going to help? Like, who's gonna be lead to capture those grants with the extended time?
We have it pretty covered.
It's covered?
The cooperative, we know, I will say that, we were in a meeting where the residents did ask SMHO to kind of help with sponsorship of Prop 123 grant. I won't speak for the authority on if that's something you can do, but I think between us we'll be trying to identify those grants and then help as we can to apply for them.
And I think to Patrick's point that we're trying to stay separate from the purchase and the sale and the agreement. This is just funding support and not to be intimately involved because that was the policy is we're not landlords,
Right.
residential property owners.
And to clarify, I don't believe the city would be involved in applying for any of these grants outside of whatever assistance we can provide on 123, but the other couple grants that at least have been identified, that's going to be for the cooperative to apply for.
One final question, because I just think it needs to be asked. Has the HOA, the Meadowwood HOA, met with the potential new buyer?
No.
They have not, okay. Why not? Why hasn't there been a conversation around this about what their intentions are, about what the rents could go to? So much of this is speculation. I feel like we've gone down this rabbit hole. They're basing everything on past experiences, but without having a conversation, about what, is it a gradual increase? Is it a 10-year increase? Is it, what is it? What's it gonna be? I don't know. I just feel like we're going down this rabbit hole, but without having all the information.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I've stayed purposely quiet, so I'm gonna speak to the policy side of things because we have SMHO in the room. And I do wanna reiterate Councilmember Ryden's point about us, between the city and SMHO, kind of determining those swim lanes in terms of potential policy ideas like tenant assistance, like preservation strategy. We both have a stake in this. There's no clear defining lines as to who owns what part of it, but we all have a stake in it. And I hope that as we move forward in our policy discussions, we are at least identifying the responsible party for coming up or at least instigating those strategies moving forward. In addition to that, I think one of the big things that Meadowwood has kind of shown us too is that while this is kind of a unique situation, we were also wholly unprepared to provide navigation assistance in the event that a sale does go, say what we are proposing here, worst case scenario in terms of rental increases, we have no stake in it, no grants were achieved, anything like that, rents are going up rapidly. We also don't necessarily have the capacity for the kind of housing navigation assistance to plug them into voucher programs, other affordable housing units across the metro area. And I think, again, this needs to be part of those policy recommendations because this problem is, at best, not going away for a decade, even with new supply coming on the line. We are going to be scrimping and trying to find those niches, those corners, individual units where we are placing individuals, and that's painstaking and hard work, and it takes monetary commitment and labor on both our behalf. So I wanted to throw a shout to say housing assistance as a service provided should be somewhere in the mix of the conversations between our two organizations moving forward. To cut to the chase on this, I agree. I think this strategy is what we can do. It provides a narrow window of opportunity for something potentially better than what is currently on the table. But to Councilmember Driscoll's point, there's a lot of unknowns. For example, obviously these grants, the timing of award and things like that, they could far surpass these dates. And at the point of 120 days of due diligence, we may have nothing in terms of notification of award. So the situation may.
The co-op.
The cooperative may not have any indication that there's any other capital funding coming into play. So that is one potential concern that I have. The other is like what comes the day after? Like what comes the day after, say, if things were to go ideally and Thistle Rock were to fully fund whatever the purchase price of the property is, the cooperative owns it. I just want to say, and I'm not saying this can't be done, I'm just saying it is a huge amount of work and dedication to run a cooperative. The benefit of a large conglomerate owning and maintaining and managing these properties, yes, you have less control over those rental increases, but the disbursement of all the services that need to be conducted can be dispersed over all those properties through a single management firm. That's legal, that's engineering, that's capital planning, that's utilities, that's, I mean, everything from cutting the lawn to like fixing a sewer pipe. That is something that then Thistle Rock, the cooperative, owns. And it can be done. My community does it. It is very possible. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that's not an easy road ahead. It is hard on the heart. It is hard when you are having to evict your neighbors due to lack of payment. That's not a great position. No one wants to do that. But that's the responsibility you are essentially taking on. And I know you have thought long and hard about this as I see heads nodding. But I just want to say that is a challenging road. And it is very possible that none of these grants or even one of these grants comes through at a much smaller fraction of the cost or the value that was applied for. You may see almost no noticeable difference in terms of the financial burden. I know $4 million seems like a lot, but it is truly only a drop in the bucket of the total purchase price. And as that is extrapolated to everyone's rent, there may not be a huge deferment in rent. I know small dollars on everyone's bill makes a huge difference. I just want to say, like, I think we are walking into that clear-eyed. I hope that Meadowood is walking into that clear-eyed as well. I am supporting this recommendation because there is a beautiful thing in running and owning and managing your lives. It is a wonderful thing. It is extremely hard, even under the best of circumstances. And I say this from experience because that is how my community has been running for 30 plus years. And we are still figuring our stuff out. Like, we are still constantly running into these things. So this is not, even a purchase by Thistle Rock but through the cooperative is not a silver bullet to these problems, and that there is still a large capital fund that needs to be invested in order to bring your community up to the standard of living that, quite frankly, we are trying, like, I think the community, the cooperative, is making up for a lot of lost ground. Like, this is a situation where we got into this position, the city, the county is confronted with this because there was such a lack of investment in the first place. And so therefore everyone is now in this position. So I just wanted to put that out there. I also wanted to say to the staff that this is really meaningful that we have invested this much time and effort into researching these options. It doesn't go unnoticed. at least from this council member's perspective. So yes, I'm in favor of this, even though it is a hard and narrow path ahead. So,
Councilmember Grove?
I agree with you. You saw what happened in Boulder, where the sewer line went out and the co-op had to come up with 4.5 million or whatever it was to fix it. This is a good plan, based on what we've come up with. I'd like to ask the question, what about the next request? Is this going to be something that is going to be, that council wants to take on from other types of communities? This is kind of unique because we only have 2 mobile home communities. But might there be other situations? Is this something that we want to do in the future or just a case-by-case basis? So I think that's something we have in the back of our mind. What's gonna happen with Woolhurst? Are we gonna go through this whole exercise again, or another type of community? And it's just something to think about. Another thing I noticed was that when you described these communities, they were 55 plus. Are they income controlled? In other words, in order to live there, do you have to have a certain AMI and income?
They're not.
Okay, so we assume, from what we've heard from the residents, that the incomes are at a certain level of AMI that would require affordable housing, but we don't know.
I don't think we
No, we
assume
haven't
that.
assumed that, no, it's not income qualified, but
But we don't know. What I'm
no, they're
saying.
not, it's not, they're not.
We know it's not income qualified.
They're not
We don't
income
know
qualified.
necessarily everyone living
So,
We don't know everyone's income, but
right, so we're assuming we're preserving affordable housing, but we don't.
Most of these, like the financing through ROC and other options, do have that component and will
So
require
they've already,
affordability.
okay, because we had to do that at Geneva Village. We assumed income levels, but we had to go in and figure that out to make sure that we were in the right.
And I will say Meadowwood did provide some documentation that they self-provided around the income levels and.
Okay, that was not described in here, so, I would, support this, but I think that, as a caution to us, are we getting into the loan business or this kind of business, and is that where we want to go? And maybe that's where we want to go, but that's part of the larger conversation maybe we need to have at a later date.
Yes, that will be, those are several of the points that we'll need to address in
Okay,
a
thank you.
housing preservation plan.
/ tenant protections.
/ navigation assistance.
They're different programs,
They are.
both of them.
Councilmember Peters?
Yeah, honestly, I was hesitant about the earnest money help, but I talked to the board today and they are hustling and working so hard and communicating so well. They are not planning on funds that 2.6 from the city or from the county, and they have a lot of other things going on. Between DOLA, Prop 123, Thistle itself, Impact Fund, CHAFA, like they have someone helping them with the grants, Gretchen, to your question. They're doing it on their own. So I think we have to do that because they've done absolutely everything they can, and they have told us from the beginning, like, do what we are hearing from the president down, like protect the low-income housing, and I think this is giving them a shot to do that. I absolutely agree with Steve that I think it could be a much harder road than, I hope it works as well as you think it will. And I think it will, costs will go up no matter what. I don't know if everyone here knows, but my family is in this line of work. I actually lived at Meadowwood for a little while. I loved it. My husband was a veteran, we were students, we had student loans, like it was low income for us, it was great. We ended up selling our place because it's a beautiful community. So I hope it continues to be a beautiful community and you guys, if this works, can keep it at that level so that it is desirable for when someone else wants to sell. I do think that the buyers, just from what I know from the industry, they are in this line of work. They're not looking to redevelop it. They want to protect this housing stock as well. I do not think that rents will double I think they will go up because they have attached a really large sales price to this park. But I think however it pans out, whether they own it or you guys own it, will probably actually be okay. So hopefully the city helping in this way is, I'm proud of us too. Like, we've done a lot of work to get to this point, so I'm on board.
Staff feel comfortable with
Yep,
comments and
we're in
direction?
that direction.
Did Robert say?
Robert did, yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like we've given, yes, I said, yes, I support this, and I think we have, this horse is almost done for today.
We're done, yeah, I think everyone had a chance to talk, so.
Cut, unless you wanted to say something. Cut.
No, I think no, Reed wants to, no, I think it's great. I mean, I'd like to just echo Steve's comments. I mean, I think that the co-op owning it might actually be higher rents than someone else owning it too. So I think it's, they've asked us to look at this and try to help them out this way, so this is what we can do, but we don't, that's something we don't know. It's all contingent on financing beyond our control.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure we're clear that we're in for 25, knowing we're probably gonna not see that money, but that 200,000 is a big number. And Reed, I'm looking specifically at you, that money will be protected and.
Understood.
May I make one more comment? I just want to thank our colleagues at SMHO. They have been at the table with us over the last 4 to 6 weeks as we've been working through this and developing options. As several council members have articulated, we have a lot of work to do, and I think we can thank both of our manufactured home park communities for spurring this conversation, about housing preservation, naturally occurring affordable housing, and how we need to hold on to it. And I know as staff, we are committed to continuing the work with SMHO to help develop those options and that policy that we can feel that we're doing this comprehensively to secure affordable housing and rental assistance. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
My navigation system.
All right, so staff's got direction there. I think we're good. Thank you for Julie and SMHO team. And I have a feeling we're gonna have some people vacate the room unless you wanna stick around for other conversations. So we'll take a 5-minute recess.
How about that? What was the holdup?
Me.
Oh, okay.
All right, next up, the agenda is discussion of Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan scope.
Thank you, Mayor. At this year's City Council retreat in February, the topic of historic preservation was a high priority for council. The council had significant discussion, some debate about how best to move forward between, and both things are needed, a citywide historic preservation plan, or alternatively, move a little faster and focus on Littleton Boulevard, given the city's aspirations for preserving architecture on that corridor, looking at some of the zoning things there. And also economic development, kind of meeting that interest that we know is there to develop that corridor. So direction at the conclusion of council's discussion was for staff to go out and develop this concept into a scope for the study, and also to hear some feedback from the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission. So staff has done those things and has heard feedback and has I think really incorporated that feedback into a proposed scope for the council tonight. So we're interested in just hearing your feedback on scope, and we have some thoughts on timing, and hopefully we can move forward with this as soon as we can. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Matt Knight, who can also introduce our Community Development staff.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So we're here to talk about the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan. Jared Chipman and Zareen Tasneem are here to present that, and that's all I have. It's the extent of what they told me I could talk about. Zareen's gonna start off the presentation.
Thanks, Matt. For the first slide. So tonight we'll be talking a little bit of background on this area along Littleton Boulevard. We'll discuss a little bit about what we are thinking about in terms of the study area for the plan. Talk about some project goals that we have defined into 5 different areas. And then talk about the project outcomes and process that we are thinking of through the sub-area plan. And then we'll end with some discussion with you all on some feedback. To provide a little bit of background, so what is a sub-area plan and what is staff's vision for this project? Typically, a sub-area plan is thought of as a comprehensive plan, but with a smaller geographic scope. Oftentimes, they might encompass a neighborhood, a downtown, a corridor, just on a smaller scale that has a unifying character with it. They involve higher level of detail than a comprehensive plan, just because it's on a smaller scale, get into a little more detail on the specific streets or specific zoning or characteristics of that area. And along that line, staff's vision for the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan is to look at this corridor and area with a more comprehensive scope that has been looked at previously with other planning efforts. So what sets Littleton Boulevard apart? There's a collection of buildings along Littleton Boulevard built post-World War II in the mid-century commercial modernism style, more commonly known as the mid-mod style, that creates a unique historic character along this corridor. This slide showcases some of those buildings in both historical and modern photos. Some previous plans and studies that have been looked at along this corridor include a 2002 design guidelines for the 1900 and 2000 West Littleton Boulevard site, which is the old sheriff's building up the hill on the east side of the railroad tracks. A 2018 commercial modernism in the greater West Littleton Boulevard corridor study, which looked at a survey of the different buildings along Littleton Boulevard. And more recently, a 2022 West Littleton Boulevard, The Story of Mid-Mile, which was a grad school project by a student in the urban planning program at University of Colorado, Denver. So in talking about the study area, loosely, we're talking about Littleton Boulevard, east of the railroad tracks to the city's boundaries, and about a block north and south of Littleton Boulevard. However, the exact study areas we anticipate will be determined in the future through the sub-area planning process. We heard feedback during our study sessions with Historic Preservation Commission and Planning Commissions on what their thoughts of the area were, and what they'd like to see. And we'll take that into consideration as well. That's why we are suggesting those boundaries for now. However, as mentioned, we'll get specific boundaries through the actual planning process. So as mentioned before, we're looking to have 5 focus areas as studied through the sub-area plan. The first is historic preservation, which is kind of how this plan kind of came about in its initial focus. Ideally developing a character area that ensures compatible development, exploring a overlay historic district as a possibility as well. Another focus area is land use and zoning, so analyzing the potential for future development along the corridor while understanding the relationship between the historic setbacks, the transition standards, and shallow parcels that exist there today.
May I ask a question real fast?
Yeah.
The prior slide, this is just, that looks like that's from a document. Is that a document? I'm just wondering if that's a document that exists, and what document is it? Because I would like to look at it.
Yeah, that's from the Capstone project created in 2022.
And that's on the webpage?
I believe.
It's based off of the commercial, the survey of the commercial, because they divided up into tiers, 4
Yeah,
different
no,
tiers of
I just
buildings. Yeah,
wondered
that's-
if I could get a hold of the document.
There is a hard part.
It can be on the computer, I just wanted to see it.
We're happy to get that document too.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry for interrupting. Thank you.
So yeah, looking at the different existing conditions that stand there today, and looking at the potential for creating design standards that might align more with that existing character, maybe exploring the creation of additional zone districts to create some of that transitional buffer between the existing commercial zone districts and the more established residential zone districts that border it just to the north and south.
Then I'm going to take it from here. So additional project goals, multimodal connectivity. So we've heard from Planning Commission and others the importance of kind of looking at the streetscape, but I do want to talk a little bit more about what staff's vision for this part of the scope is, which would be a very high level look at the street. It would not be as granular as Project Downtown, where you actually looked at block by block and what you want the streetscape to be. So in this sub-area plan, we're proposing a little different outcomes, which would be preferred cross-section of the streets, looking at potential for shorter term improvements such as additional crosswalks or something of that nature, and then analyzing some parking items as well as right now we have a number of streets that don't align with each other, so the intersections are offset. And is that preferred in the future as well? So doing more of that high level review and ultimately getting to a preferred cross-section. But with the knowledge that we currently have users of transit in this corridor with RTD bus service. We also have pedestrians, cyclists, and automobile traffic. So we want to make sure to look at all of those. And the corridor may, depending on the final scope, may also look a little bit at Powers to see how that relationship is between Littleton Boulevard and Powers on a transportation approach.
Excuse me, Jared, could you explain what street cross-section means?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So a preferred street cross-section. So for most of the corridor, not quite all of it, but most of it, we would like to assume a similar streetscape, similar look, right? So a cross-section would inform us, a preferred cross-section would inform us what the pedestrian amenities on the side would be, or bike amenities, and then how many through lanes there would be, what kind of median or tree lawn. So that, taking the right-of-way that we have and planning it as if you were driving down the street, what do you see there? And then trying to figure out what we would like all in that right-of-way with the constraints of
So
course.
it
that
is
we have.
a significant effort toward the multimodal connectivity. Sometimes when I hear cross-section, it sounds simpler than that, but that's good. Thank you.
And when we're looking at the corridor, the area, the plan area, in the comprehensive plan, there's the special corridor planning area. Are we looking at not utilizing that boundary that's in the comprehensive plan, or expanding it, or, because it seems like that's kind of an unknown right now, even though in the comprehensive plan, that's what was identified as the.
Yeah, staff has, I'm aware of the boundary you're discussing. Staff has contemplated a little bit of varying boundaries depending on the discipline. So if you're talking about historic preservation, the boundary may be X. If you're talking about economic development and land use, we might want to expand that a little bit more to capture some of the existing commercial that's a little bit north on Broadway or a little bit further south, closer to Windermere there. The same is true of transportation. I think it would be important to take any transportation into consideration, basically from railroad tracks all the way to the city limits, the eastern city limits. So I know that's not like an absolute firm direct response, but I think each one of those items may warrant going a little bit different, or having different areas.
As long as you preserve my Taco Bell, I'm okay, just keep going.
Economic development is also project goals with SEDS, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. It also discussed Littleton Boulevard, and so building a potential strategy around, such a vibrant corridor, and making it even better. Is there some form of, arts and culture or something else that we could look at in regards to economic development? So having that as a project goal would also be important. We also have really good startup branding with the Mid-Mod Mile. Can that be expanded upon?
Is that the branding on the previous slide?
That was a part of a previous plan. Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Very Jetsons.
Yeah, absolutely. Housing diversity, then seeking opportunities to increase housing diversity and the capacity that aligns with the character and vision of the corridor. Then contemplating the best transition between more commercial uses and zoning along Littleton Boulevard and the primary single-family residential neighborhoods to the north and south. So how best can we, look at this corridor for additional housing because of the potential for redevelopment along it in certain locations. So maybe identifying nodes that may be best suited. Proposed project outcomes. So I have a number of proposed project outcomes. They really reflect the goals. So recommendations related to the preservation of the historic character of the area is a proposed outcome. Analysis and recommendations for a multimodal approach to addressing transportation concerns. And this is once again getting that cross-section down, analyzing parking, analyzing crosswalks to make better north-south connections, and analysis of the existing street network as we do have those offset intersections. Understanding the potential location for housing and mixed-use type developments, and particularly affordable housing. Recommendations related to strengthening the economic base of the area. Once again, the SEDS plan, and putting some of those items into this plan, and then into action.
In the public works overarching plan, there's proposals for renewal of streets and sidewalks. Has the Littleton Boulevard been taken out of that because of this planning process? Or is it in there for the sidewalks to be replaced?
I think it's still part of like the ADA accessibility plan for sure, which
Yeah.
is actually gonna be.
So we have coordinated with Public Works. We have not slowed down on or requested that Public Works look at something differently. So as of right now, if there's a plan to work on some sidewalks in smaller portions, we recommend that they move forward with that existing plan. One of the reasons why is, that work can be done and we can still analyze the new condition that comes with that sidewalk improvements and build that into, a much longer term future vision. So I don't think that they're at odds.
I don't want to replace our sidewalks on Littleton Boulevard. They're narrow, they're not necessarily the safest, so.
I do think, and one of the things that, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit with the funding slide here in the future, but I think one of the things to keep in mind, and one of the reasons why I want to stay at such a high level when it comes to transportation items, is we know that we have Project Downtown. And Project Downtown is certainly a priority, and we know that there's going to be needed funding to make that streetscape vibrant and what the city has worked on. We imagine that Littleton Boulevard, depending on resources, et cetera, in the future and prioritization, that may be a subsequent item, but it is not the near term that Project Downtown is. It is definitely a longer range vision. So therefore, we're proposing not to get too granular, because if we get too granular, we may have to reduce some items in the future. But if we stay high level, and this plan can guide those granular plans in the future, that's what we're recommending through the sub-area plan.
I also think it's really important to note that, especially since they're all in the room right now, that Public Works will be a key stakeholder in this project, right? We'll be working closely with them as we look at everything as it relates to TMP, everything as it relates to everything we're doing on the transportation side is a key part of this. So whatever we decide, whichever direction we decide to go, they will be a partner in it for sure. So
After you say that, so I would really encourage you to think about how to integrate this conversation with the Transportation Mobility Board. I'm confident they'd like to engage in it.
Absolutely.
We spent a lot of time at the last meeting talking about the downtown Littleton plan, and that was something they had a lot of good insights on. So I hope you engage them as well.
Great, thank you.
And then recommendations related to zoning, land use, and focus on future character of the corridor and the relationship between various uses. Funding and process. So staff talked or originally proposed working on Littleton Boulevard in a future year. City Council gave us really good direction to prioritize that ahead of some other planning efforts. And so we've been working on developing an RFP and trying to find some resources as the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan was prioritized outside of that budgeting cycle. So we have found some funds that we might be able to utilize this year, some funds that would carry over into next year. However, we do feel that to do a very comprehensive sub-area plan, those funds would be insufficient. And we're proposing through this effort this evening, this conversation, to wait just a little while. We don't think it would affect our timing very much because we only think it would be about 3-ish months or so. But start working through the budgeting cycle to better understand exactly what kind of funding we would have available for the overall plan. And then once we have a pretty solid idea, which can, in conversations with, with other staff, sounds like the budgeting process, we would have a pretty good idea of where the funds are in early fall. And then go out for RFP based off of those conversations with the intent to be ready for through that procurement process, ready to onboard a consulting team shortly after the budget is adopted. So we don't feel that there's a lot of time lost for making this a more comprehensive effort. And one of the reasons why staff is really proposing trying to keep this together as a comprehensive effort is because we don't necessarily want this plan to go the track of some of our other plans, which are really great, but really focused on one item, and unfortunately have only seen marginal implementation success. So we do want this to be a very focused, a plan that's focused on implementation.
Jared, the alternative to comprehensive approach might be to take each one of those, one or two of those components on the right side and do them individually, which would ultimately, probably take several years, as compared with one comprehensive effort. Could be done in about 18 months.
And I think it's important to note too that when you take individual pieces out, right, you lose the context of all the other individual pieces when you try and come up with a plan. So ultimately, the historic preservation piece, it will affect land use, affect multimodal compatibility and things like that. So we really need to make sure that all those things kind of align together to come up with something that actually really works. Not just kind of individually at one level, but literally pillars holding up the entire plan together.
The only concern I had is, I understand the comprehensive, and that makes sense, and you'll get to it, is the timeframe. It's 2026 before we have a plan done, let alone implementation. A lot can happen in terms of destroying buildings or buildings going up that don't fit into the character of the community. So I would like to advocate using some of these past surveys and doing some high-level design guidelines, for lack of, I don't know if it looks like that, to make sure that we don't destroy the character while we're doing our comprehensive planning. And I realize that's, in essence, taking maybe a piece of this, but if we don't, 2026 comes and we have empty lots that now have buildings that don't match the character, and we go, oops, well, that's where I think we could run into trouble.
So one item we will progress to the next slide. So on this next slide where we do talk about the potential to go out to 26, that is definitely a conservative approach. I have been trying to build out a time frame that, hopefully we can run a little quicker than that. But even if we don't and we run into 2026, one of the things that I personally anyway would like to scope in this plan is we have so much wonderful historic preservation data out there and several ideas for how to implement different things. I'd like to do a robust community engagement effort because for some reason, these other historic items have not been implemented. So I don't know if it was getting to a certain spot with drafting codes and then feeling like we didn't have the public engagement, or if there was another reason. But we have some draft language, and I would much rather go through this planning effort, get all of that public engagement, public interaction, all those voices, and then be able to draft something that we can hopefully, almost runs, right after, almost concurrently, but right after this planning effort with draft language ready to go, so that it wouldn't be a long time in between. We wouldn't lag too much in between the planning effort and then at least the historic component of it.
It seems to me that doing this more comprehensively would have better support for, saying this is the historic preservation aspect rather than forcing it on without having the bigger picture of and getting everyone involved in that.
And it's fine, it's just that the timing takes so long, and like there's empty lots, and we could lose some of the
If it's an empty lot, what are we losing?
a building that goes up that doesn't at all match. If you don't have any design.
If a building is developed between now and January of 2026, that new building would be developed before we get our new code in a row and then.
Well, I mean,
The likelihood of that
stuff's good. Something's gonna get, we can't stop all development, any sort of.
No, we can't, but we
construction.
could guide development. I mean, that's what happened downtown. Look at the, the block at, the most western block had a different kind of zoning, and that's why we have the taller buildings. It happens, and we can argue that we love shift workers and we love the view house and all that stuff, but it doesn't match this 3-story Main Street buildings because the zoning was different, and it goes up and it goes fast, and things get demolished. So that's, I like this idea where you have the community outreach. And from my perspective, being on HPV for so long, projects got started and then they just lost momentum. People lost interest, there was other priorities. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with them, they just lost momentum. And I think this is a good answer. I just would like to see if there's something we can do, and we could do a moratorium. I don't advocate for that, but that could be done. And it's not something that, it's pretty severe, but that would stop development, which I don't think we want, but that's an option to keep the character of the community. So is there something halfway in between? And I'm proposing some design guidelines, some interim design guidelines.
Yeah, so a couple additional things. One, I think that the time to develop the design guidelines would, there would be a time component with that. Second, depending on exactly what our, proposed outcome is, there's been a lot of talk of a overlay district, a historic overlay district. And what historic or overlay districts in general, they can be kind of a combo. We could do a land use and a historic overlay district. The one thing they do is they could focus quite heavily on the look, the character, we can even go past guidelines to some standards in there. What they won't do though is, we just had someone from History Colorado at the last Historical Preservation Commission, and she did indicate what they can't do is stop demolitions. So that is something that would not be the purview of an overlay district. So there are still some restrictions there that, or some goals that we may
Well,
not be
there
able
was
to accomplish.
proposed code on demolitions by Historic Preservation Board that were never looked at. I mean, in fact, they keep getting lost over and over again. So there is some verbiage that they had recommended that have not been adopted. So that's not, that could be put in our code as part of our normal updates.
But I think with the staff presentation and recommendation is that they're suggesting not to do it that way because of various reasons, and so I think.
Discuss this in February at a retreat.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah, this is what they're coming back with.
Right, no,
But we didn't discuss the detail. We didn't know when it was gonna start, when it was gonna end. We discussed the concept.
Yeah, I think where we were in February was that instead of subject-specific focus, that we were gonna focus on narrow geography comprehensively, because I think, to your point, yes, I think you're right, like, there is the potential for things to change, things to be slightly off character in the short interim window between when we start and when this plan. Like, it's a very real possibility. My perspective is that, like, I also am coming at this from that transportation perspective, sidewalk accessibility, all that kind of stuff, which is kind of my leading priority, but I think this plan probably balances all those things pretty well together, and I think that kind of meets everyone's needs.
Oh, I think the plan is wonderful. It's just the time it takes to do it.
Sure.
And what can happen in the interim.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm proposing some sort of high-level design guidelines to prevent that from happening.
I'll just get straight to the point then. Anyone else on council want to have staff consider Councilmember Grove's suggestions to?
So I really appreciate the 5 components. I'm a little bit frustrated where in February we established this as a priority and essentially, several months later we come back and, that has to wait till next year for us to do this. And so that feels frustrating to me that we established this priority and and find out there's really not enough money in the budget to do it this year. And so that's kind of my perspective on it, is why do we, what was the point of establishing the priority if we can't do it during the year? And what I heard you say is we have some money for this, but just not enough to do everything we want to do. And so, you know, I'm, in my practice, which I usually is not with cities, I'm very used to, you know, RFPs that say, you know, this component of the project is subject to funding being approved during the next funding cycle. So you know, it feels like this could be one where we lay out the project and say, we've got enough money for this first segment, get started. And then if council approves, which given the conversation, the council will probably approve, then we would move forward. I just think there's other options for moving this quicker than saying, breaking out one of the 5 priorities. I think your 5 priorities are good, and I really think they reflect what we talked about and what we want to do. I'm frustrated by we established a priority 3 months ago, and now we're finding out that priority has to wait.
I think that was not my take, that, you know, our priorities all are gonna be done within a fiscal year here. I think that was, hey, staff, come back with us to how we're gonna get this done over a course of time.
And it's that 50,000-foot view.
And this is approximately the time that we had thought, if we were gonna do a narrow, you know, the discussion at the retreat focused on historic preservation and economic development. For that scope, this is approximately the time we would have gone out for that. It does take some time to develop scopes, to think through project, all of those boundaries. We also talked about interest in hearing from HPC and a planning commission, make sure that they were also, you know, engaged on this, and staff's work along with, you know, both of those groups kind of built out, you know, the concept to be more comprehensive and to address the whole thing once, which is different than what we had talked about in February. So, you know, I think we're coming to you saying we think this is a better plan and this is the right way. We are seeking council's input on those components. You know, I think rough numbers, and staff Jared's leg will kick me under the table, but, you know, rough numbers, we'd be looking about $500,000 for the very narrow piece. I'm not sure we do have that in this year's budget. The broader piece will be about $1.5 million, approximately, if I can add an ish. You know, we don't know yet, so that's kind of the difference, and we do want council's you know, input given those implications for the project. So that's where we're coming from.
I support more comprehensive. I feel urgency to get going. So I'm not pushing back against the more comprehensive perspective. I'm pushing to, you know, how can we get going sooner rather than later? And I want to say, you know, there's one thing you talked about within the on the slide around housing diversity. I really appreciate the second bullet there around transitions. I think we're really struggling with the transition right now between the Cherry Cricket and the neighborhoods behind it. So I really appreciate that. The only other comment I had was I'm not confident this is a good idea at all, but I've definitely had constituents talk about trolleys as part of the transportation solution, and I guess I feel like there are people in our community who would like us to explore that option more deeply. And I'm done. Yeah, you can. I'm done.
I have 2 questions that would help me answer your question, Kyle. Do we, would the same people be working on the design guidelines that would be working on this overall plan?
That's our preference would be that we would get a consultant that would bring along a team, and part of the team would be historic preservation that would therefore work on the guidelines, yes.
I mean, I guess my question is, I don't want to slow down the whole process in order to get this small piece that Councilmember Grove's talking about. Would that happen, do you think?
The challenge, a part of the challenge that we face, because I'll be honest, we did try to jump on this right away. We took that direction, and what we took to Plan Commission was quite a bit different from what we've coalesced around here, because we were trying to get that urgency and that speed. And ultimately, after gaining a lot of feedback, that's when we first started to think, wow, we could have a much better, broader comprehensive plan. And then that's what led to our request for seeking, one funding source. If we broke this out, our concern was, the procurement process of doing 2 procurement processes. Would we end up with the same consulting team? We do feel that that's important, that continuity is important. And so those are some of the rationales for why we're bringing it to you in this fashion.
And can I jump in real quick? And so looking back at our timeline from the retreat that was presented 2 weeks ago in our Horizon 2027. So the Littleton Boulevard was Q2 25, and I think that's what they're saying is, hey, for 3 or 4 or 5 months longer than we were originally thinking to do this all comprehensively it would take. So that's pushing it back out to Q4 of 25, which is what you have right there. So I think it's, rather than stack them on top of each other over the course of a couple of years, to do it all at once in 18 months is that's why it was pushed out a little.
No, I appreciate the comprehensive nature, and I appreciate the engagement of boards and commissions. I think that's really important, and I feel like I said, and engage this other group too. So obviously I understand that part of the problem, but I just would like us to be as creative as possible, getting started as soon as possible.
So
My other question was, and I should probably know this, are we making new builds conform to this plan, or is it more like saving what we have and having a vision that goes down? If there's a new build, we're not gonna make them build mid-mod, right?
Well, if you had design guidelines, they'd have to do certain things to conform to the character.
Overlay zone, something like that, where you can get a little bit more nuance in terms of the design of what comes back and what's built.
We would be putting more
But
pressure on
even
that.
all the mid-mod buildings there, have very distinct architecture, and so some people think the brutalist style is horrible and ugly. It's all subjective.
It kind of is.
I guess to answer your question, then I don't think anything happens that quickly around here, for one. And I think probably we should just move forward on this track as quickly as possible.
There, just to kind of talk a little bit about the risk piece of it, so Councilmember Grove, you talked about, wanting to make sure that we're getting this done quickly with the risk of other properties potentially getting developed in the meantime or changes. We had Brian Gardner here at the Planning Commission meeting to discuss this and to really discuss what is the market right now in that area, and there really are only 2 properties on the market, both asking, they're very proud of their properties. So we didn't really feel at this point there's a lot of risk from that standpoint. There's nobody seems to be, other than the kind of few that have gone up in the Cherry Cricket and Littleton Brewing. I do think, though, it's important to note that the code that we have currently is really pushed towards adaptive reuse. And so we've seen that be somewhat successful, right, with Lost Coffee, Cherry Cricket, and ultimately Littleton Brewing as well. But so I don't think, there is risk, right? Obviously, somebody could come and buy something up.
There's an empty lot, and I can't tell you where it is. I pass it on Littleton Boulevard.
Next to the liquor store.
Is that, and
And
I
it's
just
not
don't know
on the
what
market.
they left there.
Yeah, and it's
Private.
not on the market, and from what I understand, and Brian's here if he wants to come up and answer this question, but
He's like, no.
I don't think it's.
So I don't think
I don't
there's
think there's
a desire for council to pull out the
Yeah, I agree
Preservation.
with you. Kyle.
Yeah.
Cool. I do have one kind of thing, so.
Could I ask this, if we don't do design guidelines because of the effort, if we get an adaptive reuse, which is a little easier, or if we get a new building, can we at least make them aware that we have this mid-mod mile, so at least they would consider, if they put up a new building, to keep it in character? I mean, we've done that in the past where a property owner, I can't give you the address, did not realize they were part of a mid-mod mile. And once Andrea spoke to them and explained to them the changes to their windows, they go, oh, we can do it this way instead of that way and fit into the, the character. Could we at least
Yes.
ask for that.
Absolutely.
And we now are staffed in that area, and I know that our new historic preservation planner, more than just being aware and letting them know, has said how she's wanting to get involved with those projects as they emerge and to work with them within our current code.
Okay, thank you.
To kind of
Just at
optimize
least
those.
hedge our bets a little bit.
So I appreciate the flexibility with the boundaries, because I do understand what you're saying. But so one part of the boundary is the area east of Littleton Boulevard, and based on my prior board role, there's a big Littleton Public Schools property there. So if Littleton Littleton High School is what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I missed being too obtuse. So that
There are
Littleton.
two large properties.
It's a pretty large property. The Littleton, in the Littleton Public Schools in the past has done a bond every 10 years. And their next bond will be 2028. And if they follow historical precedents, which they don't have to, and I'm not privy to any conversations, it would include money to replace some of their schools. And I know from when I was on the board, that school was the school that had the most infrastructure needs. And so it could be a top of the list. And so just put that information anywhere that's helpful, which may be nowhere, but, and the bond would be 2028.
In line with what Robert said about kind of thinking about outside the box in terms of transportation and mobility options, we got right away for days on the public side on a huge part of Littleton Boulevard. If you pretend that median, the pyramid median is not in non-existence, I would just say in terms of I really like this plan, by the way. I think it's really well balanced. I think it fits a lot of the kind of different desires that all the council has brought up. I think it's a solid plan to move forward. I would encourage you either in the writing or selection of the firms moving forward to just challenge those firms to don't envision it the way that they are currently envisioning it. I mean, beyond some of the historic properties, like don't assume that medians, sidewalks, curb cuts, things of the orientation of streets, like you said, connectivity at critical intersections and the like. Just tell them to push the boundaries of what they think might be an immovable object in your selection process, because I think sometimes we come back and see planning documents that essentially reflect conditions as is, more or less with a new paint job. And I'm happy to really change some of the face of that stuff. Because quite honestly, there's a lot of competing priorities, housing density, the transportation, the historic preservation, where we are going to see an intersection of those priorities. There will be competing priorities, and quite frankly, we just need options in front of us that are discernible enough that we can make concrete decisions about them. So just push your consultants in the selection process if you could.
I like it.
Yeah, that's all I got, but otherwise, I'm excited.
Decisions, you're thinking more brutalist style of apartments.
More brutalism, yeah. More like a giant square in the middle of the
You bring up a
Littleton
good
Boulevard.
point. As we put together all these areas, we don't have to work within what we have. So I agree.
Thanks for your time.
It's gonna be a fun project.
Yeah, it's great.
Do we have any other
Did you want to go to the
questions?
That's good, sorry. Was there, did we say final words, not the final part?
Yeah, sorry, the mouse isn't.
We have direction.
Everyone feel good about that?
And we will have some thought about how we can move it forward, if that's possible. So, because I guess I will just say to that point, I do hear pretty much unanimous support from council to move forward this way, especially if we can move ahead faster. Is that fair?
For the record, I'm gonna go back to what we talked about in February. I think this is low priority. Having HPB involved in this project is again, a reach.
I think it was a low priority, it was in the first quartile, so it was one of the higher priority things.
Well, I know it was for you guys.
Right, yeah,
That is a fair statement.
So it's one of those things where I think it will reduce the amount of people that want to potentially develop there. I think the more constraints we put on this about, I like mid-century architecture. The architecture we show up there, there's 4 buildings that I would keep. The rest can go down. So there's just isn't much fat past, and I'm happy to take you all for a drive, and you guys point out which buildings you think are worth keeping past Windermere. And I guarantee you there's not maybe more than 4. So, you know, it's just not, it's just, I'm not a huge proponent of spending much time on this stretch.
Noted. Any other, you get your questions answered there? Good on the
Yes, I do feel that.
project goals and the single process? Yep. Great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Did you guys trade out for
Who?
your
Who's
arch
coming?
enemies for Public Works?
Arch enemies?
Arch enemies in Public Works?
Sharks,
Sharks and the Jets.
Never mind, there's a new gold medal chance for me. Arch enemies?
Could I ask Robert,
Yeah.
Pam, could you guys kind of move Patrick this way? Because I'd really like to have this
That's
team.
throwing mice around and everything.
I'd like to have this team at the table if we
We're gonna be
could.
getting up there.
Brent, you can kind of, the chairs aren't at the table, that's fine, but just so folks are all kind of where it works.
There's nothing. I would note, Jim,
As they give their talk.
Jim, you're the barrier for the candy making it around the table. Because these guys probably want
credit for lunchbox.
Exactly. I'm reading the audience, you know. No place that way, man. You don't know what's up these?
We'll just wait for Robert to sit down, we can start.
That was fair. Can I leave now? Fair and funny.
Alright, Jim.
Thanks, Mayor. So I think 2 weeks in a row now, we have had outstanding attendance at our meetings from Public Works. I do want to give this group a whole lot of credit for work. I know this presentation tonight was truly a collaborative effort. There's a lot of good work happening, and I can tell that this group has been looking forward really to sharing with council what they do and how we do it. I think, one more thing I was gonna just say, but I'll just turn it over. I know Brent as our interim director, has led this team, and this is the largely the Public Works Management team. So thank you all for being here, and with that, I'll turn it over to Brent, and we can move through the overview.
Right, yeah, thanks, Jim, and good evening, Mayor and City Council. So tonight, myself and the division managers will be giving kind of an overview of the Public Works Department. I did bring all the experts with me, so anytime you guys want to ask questions, go ahead and stop us. I mean, you may want to ask our utilities operations manager, what's the weirdest thing you've ever pulled out of our sanitary sewers?
We may not want to ask him that also.
I want to know.
I knew somebody would. Anyway, so here's our mission statement. The Public Works Department is committed to efficiently providing, operating, and maintaining public works infrastructure, facilities, and services to make everyday life safe and convenient for the public we serve. And I really think this ties in kind of nicely with our city values of first-rate service, inclusion, integrity, and respect. And so here's just an overview of our organizational chart that was put together earlier this year.
Can anybody over 50 read that?
So it says Public Works Director, City Engineer, Deputy Public Works.
You're under 50.
My hearing's not working.
Well, I'll just highlight, I'll give you the highlights. So on this organizational chart, the city engineer is over transportation, CIP, capital improvements, and development services. And one thing that we're thinking about doing is moving development services into community development. That was part of that Tipton process we went through to try to improve the process in the development review. Next is the deputy director. Under them, water resources, asset management, and utilities, that's storm and sanitary. And then the director is currently over streets, fleets, facilities, grounds, and open space, and the executive admin. And so I would imagine once we had a new director that this organizational chart will probably change a little bit. It's a pretty flat structure, I think. The other thing is we're funded from many sources. So general fund, 3A, we have enterprise funds for storm and sanitary, open space and grants. And the note there on the side about positions not shown. So we are advertising for a sustainability coordinator. And we're advertising for a senior project manager. And our facilities project manager actually starts next week. So who is Public Works? I kind of like to think about Public Works as, I don't know if you guys have seen that show Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. So we're kind of the department that does all the kind of the tough jobs that kind of keep the city up and going, you know. There's 9 different divisions. There's 90 full-time employees plus seasonals and interns, you know, so we maintain the medians. We manage the community garden. We fix all the equipment and vehicles. We do all the pothole patching. We clear snow. Facilities, we maintain all the facilities. We maintain all of our parks and open space. We actually clean the sanitary sewer, and we also maintain the stormwater. So here's just a kind of an overview of our infrastructure. So we have 129 miles of sanitary sewer, and we all know we jointly own the South Platte Renew wastewater treatment plant with Inglewood. And we serve 8 connector districts, and our service area is roughly 60 square miles. We have 55 miles of storm sewer. We have hundreds of detention and water quality ponds that we either maintain or we're responsible for inspecting. And we all know in 2023, we had 4 culvert failures with ongoing repairs roughly in the $3.6 million range. So I think later this year, you'll see, we'll bring you kind of a packet of what we want to rehab for our storm sewer. So the other thing we have 162 center line miles of streets. And one thing you should note, so that is just measured at the center line. So for example, there's also something called a lane mile. And for example, 4-lane arterial in 1 mile would have 4 lane miles. So I think we're right around 350 lane miles that we actually maintain, along with our 61 signals and 58 bridges. And as far as facilities, we have 38 buildings, over 400,000 square feet that we maintain. Fleet has 330 vehicles and equipment that they maintain, and we have 1,400 acres of open space and over 200 miles of trails that we maintain.
And Fleet maintains all the PD fleet as well? Or
Yes, I think that's a big part of your job is PD, right?
Correct. Fixing the PD vehicles when they scratch them?
Yep.
Pete, yeah, we maintain everything that rolls and a fair amount of stuff that does not roll.
Did roll.
So this just shows some of the strategic and master plans we're working on this year. I will note probably the traffic master plan is probably something that'll be done in 2025. And I think you guys have all seen the slide from before of all the adopted plans, you know, that we've done over the years. So I guess really we have 10 plans we're kind of working on this year. So I'll be turning this over to Brent Thompson, our city engineer. So Brent has actually been with the city for 7 years, and he's really seen the city go through some big changes. You know, when he first started, I think Public Works probably had a more limited budget, and now we have a much larger budget, a much larger capital improvement program, and much more development going on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brent.
Thanks, Brent. Evening, council. Yeah, indeed, the change that I have seen in my 7 years is pretty significant and really exciting time that we're in right now, particularly with all the revenue that's coming in, the opportunities to improve our public infrastructure. So in engineering, we are 20 full-time employees, which I think is about double from when I started, which is incredible to think about the change that I've seen in that period of time. We have a capital improvement team that oversees capital improvements on pavement management, bridges, traffic signals, intersection improvements, multimodal, utilities, fiber, you name it, everything, horizontal infrastructure, I guess is the way I like to think about it. In 2023, we executed about $15 million worth of capital improvement projects. And right now, we are actively working on about 40 different capital improvement projects. Some just initiating design, some going through construction. And over the course of the next 5 years, those projects have a value of over $100 million. Both city funds as well as grant funds. We have a water resources team that oversees stormwater permitting on both private property and public property and manages all of our floodplains in conjunction with FEMA and Mile High Flood District. We have a development review team that oversees the engineering side of development review, and like Brent said, that may be transitioning over to community development at some point, but still the same staff doing that type of work. At any one time, I'd say there's probably 70 active development projects, anywhere from concept development all the way through final completion. So a lot of projects that a very small group of engineers is overseeing. We have a transportation and traffic team comprised of engineers, planners, and operations teams. They're overseeing or reviewing traffic impact studies, for example, on development projects. They're doing design development on major transportation improvements, bicycle and pedestrian initiatives, the neighborhood traffic calming program. We have a great operations team, 4 folks there that are making sure that our signals are operating 24/7 and operating efficiently and effectively. And then we're undertaking corridor studies, and you'll hear more about that in 2 weeks when transportation team comes and gives you an update on safer streets.
Real quick, who's putting in the new signals? Is that the city?
For
example, on poles?
Replacing existing signals.
Yeah,
That is
the new
us.
poles and everything?
Absolutely.
That's the city?
That is the city. We
Sturgeon?
did 9 intersections that we replaced this year.
Yeah, okay.
We stockpiled those poles when they were cheap.
That's right. Forgot about that. That's right.
They were not absurdly expensive.
Cost effective is the word we're using these days.
We have, once we're fully staffed, we'll have a staff of 6 folks who oversee right-of-way inspection and permitting. Last year, they processed almost 800 right-of-way permits. That's a 10% growth from the year before and a 20% growth from 2021. They're doing inspections on development projects, say if a development is widening a sidewalk along the public right-of-way, utility excavations, if there's a water main break, for example, they'll go out and make sure that the street is restored to the condition that we want it in. And then we see a lot of sanitary sewer lateral repairs. If somebody's got a backup in their sanitary sewer, we'll make sure that that gets inspected and restored properly. The same team also oversees utility locates. So if you call 811, if you're going to be digging in your yard or in the street or something like that, they will go out and mark those public utilities. Nearly 9,000 utility locates that we processed in 2023. And that's been a huge growth, 20% growth from the previous year and 45% growth from 2021. So that's indicating there's a lot of private work that's going on out there, and it's important that our staff is out there and ensuring that the right-of-way is restored to the conditions that we expected. All right, something I'd like to highlight is, and certainly council has heard this before, all the grant fund projects that we've leveraged over the past several years. Currently, we're managing 18 grant funded projects, anywhere from local funds such as Arapahoe County Open Space grants, all the way through to federal projects. The value of those projects is over $83 million. It's just phenomenal when I see that number. The city's contribution is about $18 million.
What was the grant funding when you started 7 years ago?
Yeah.
So we can thank you for that?
I would thank a lot of the staff. Great collaboration. And something I do want to highlight too is collaboration with partner agencies is leveraging a lot of dollars. Nearly all of those 18 grant funded projects have funding from, say, Arapahoe County or City of Centennial or Douglas County or South Suburban. So, you know, a lot of partnerships. It's really important to build these regional projects. So looking,
If I could, I just need to kind of toot your horn, Brent, because this shows really that scaling that we're doing. I think we don't, I know that we talk about the projects, but, Brent said that when we've doubled, which sounds like a lot, and it is, from 10 to 20 staff in this area, this division. But when you think we've gone from, 0 grant funded positions to 18, 0 to $83 million, plus all the other, initiatives that we're trying to manage. Scaling the public works operation has been a major thing for us, and it's kind of trailed the funding that we've had. So they're doing a great job of kind of realizing what it's going to take to manage this capital plan and keep going. But you see all of that and you hear about it in our budget conversations.
Thank you. So looking into 24 and 25 initiatives, we'll be delivering construction of about $85 million worth of projects. Certainly, Santa Fe and Mineral is a big portion of that at about 25 million, but a lot of grant funded projects, a lot of projects being delivered over the next couple of years. So pay attention to cone zones when you're out there. It's gonna be a good challenge getting around Littleton for the next couple of years.
Are these projects inclusive of roads, mill overlays and medium, is that type of stuff?
All the above,
Yeah, okay.
and underground infrastructure too.
Yeah. Has there been some conversation around putting some conduit in when we're tearing up downtown Main Street for pipe? For utilities, for potentially burying those lines in the future?
Absolutely, yep.
That will be one of the phases of downtown is actually, planning for some of the undergrounding for, maybe fiber and electric, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with the Santa Fe Mineral parcels down there, I suppose that would make sense.
Yep, planning for all of that.
And then Aberdeen Village, right? No?
You guys got your new road, you're good
Aberdeen
for
Village is now
another 50 years.
You're done with all your We did, they're lovely, my new road is very nice, thank you very much.
You're done.
I am done.
All right, looking at a couple other things that we're targeting for 24 and 25, updating our right-of-way management ordinances. So as we make these significant investments in improving our infrastructure, we want to preserve it in that condition. So when we've got private utilities that are out there excavating, we want to restore it to a like or better condition. So we want to tighten up our standards a little bit for that. We'll be adopting the Littleton Engineering Design Standards, so that's defining design and construction criteria for construction of public infrastructure.
Is there not a national design standard that, like we do for electricity? Why is it the Littleton Engineer Design Standard?
But it seems like every municipality.
Is everybody copying us around the country?
Well, they're all fairly similar, but
Yeah.
I would say most municipalities have their own specific right-of-way or
So they don't
engineering
have a
design.
standard like electrical?
I mean, when I
Pretty
worked in
much.
Nebraska, we had something called the 10 state standards, but I don't think we have anything like that in Colorado.
There are a lot of standards that are fairly universal, but
You don't start from scratch.
International Building Code, stuff like that.
Yeah, but we're gonna be better than Nebraska. Right.
I mean, yeah, right.
It's not for everyone.
We will continue to work on multimodal safety improvements. Certainly council is aware of all of that with the Safer Streets Initiative. Improve communication and public outreach on our capital improvement projects in collaboration with the communication department. And then, again, collaboration with community development, economic development on the design the future process for development review. That's all I have.
So next up, we have Mike Thompson. He's our street operations manager. He's the guy at the end of the table. He just had neck surgery, as you can all tell. Mike's been with the city for a year and a half, and he's really helped us to, I guess, further our maintenance operations in streets. He's got a great background in guardrail replacement and maintenance. That's not something we ever did in-house before. Also has a great background on asphalt repairs and also bridge repairs. So I'll turn it over to Mike.
So as Brent mentioned, our budget went from $2 million to 15 or 17 million in just a few years. As a result of that, Littleton has a large amount of backlog streets in very poor condition. So streets, we spend 90% of our time in the summer trying to just hold those streets together until Brent's projects can get to us and get them repaired. Just trying to keep them from turning into gravel. This summer, we have a couple of large projects going for streets. We're doing mastic seal. We're sealing the wide cracks around town. We've had lots of C-click fixes come in complaining about wide cracks, so we're trying to zip those up. We have a big list.
What are white cracks?
They are cracks over 1.5 inches. Last week we encountered some cracks out in Trail Market, 8 inch wide, 2 feet deep. And nobody complained about it.
Trail Mark Canyon.
So we need to try to get those zipped back together, like Cal just sent me a picture of a guy with the Elmer's glue out there gluing the cracks back together. That's basically what we're doing. And then later this summer, we will have a mini mill and a paver, and we'll be out patching bad areas. The streets we want to preserve with, oh Lordy, what are they called?
Mastic?
No, the seal coats. We only, slurry seals, thank you, Brent. We have small areas of bad areas on streets that we go in with a mini mill and a paver and we fix those. Instead of coming in and replacing a whole street, that 70% of the street is in good shape. And that gets us another 20 years on that street. So that's what we'll be doing this fall. We spend, every week we spend 1 to 2 days patching potholes around town. It's never ending. It doesn't matter if the sun's out or it's raining. We just have an incredible amount of potholes throughout town. It's constant. But eventually, Brent's projects are gonna catch up with us and slow that down. And of course, in the winter, we deal with a lot of ice calls, the ice on the south sides of the streets and the shady areas. And we have a good plow team, a very experienced crew that does an excellent job plowing our streets. Does that answer that slide?
Mike is the man behind the snow plan, so kind of the snow czar. He has a great team, but when it comes to the late nights and the planning and the 2 and 3 a.m. decisions, Mike's who we look to in our office for
One of the
decisions.
toughest things to do is to toot your own horn, but last year we were able to come up with a plow route map that prioritized every street in town depending on traffic volume, schools, hospitals, police, fire. And we were able to focus on those parts of town with the plowing. Now, there's still parts of town that we just don't have funding to plow, and the residents are used to that. So some of them still throw snowballs at us if they see us. They don't even want us on their street in the winter, and others would love to see us plow it. So the citizens seem to be happy with it the way it is. So I'm not messing with it.
So I said, one thing that we'll be coming to city council to ask for is an asphalt recycler for the streets group, or the streets division. What it is, they'll be able to take the millings and they'll be able to add some emulsion to it, and they'll be able to use that to patch potholes. And that'll be a much more efficient way for us to do that work. So, just a heads up, I guess.
And I know that snow plowing is very hard work, and they do have a 2, 3 in the morning and they're working on holidays and things. But snow is very passionate. And when people, this is what I hear from citizens, snowplows often push snow where they've just shoveled out. And I know your people have to deal with a lot of frustrated homeowners and et cetera. My ask would be is if they could be as customer service driven as possible. I have heard that some people say, well, I'm just supposed to plow this, I can't listen to what you have to say, or this is the routine, I don't care that you just plow, you just spent all this time shoveling, this is where I have to go. I don't know how to help them, but if they could just understand there's frustrations on both sides and to make sure that it's not elevated.
Yeah, they do try. Unfortunately, they're not able to open up every single driveway in town.
And we know that.
Yeah, that's just, but if we see, if we see somebody that has big, wet, heavy snowballs in their driveway, we do try to come back. And in future years, as the budget allows, I'm ordering pickups through Cal that have V-snowplows on them, where we can have a person run around and take care of those issues behind the plows. And the
That would be
V will help
wonderful.
pull those out and try to keep those complaints down.
That would be wonderful, I think that would go a long way.
That's a couple of years out yet.
And I can say that's one thing I was really touched by when I did a ride along this past winter, just when the crews would come back together for a break or something, talking about the areas where they saw these snowballs there, and these areas where they wanted to send a supervisor or, or someone back to do a little extra plowing here and corners here. So that care and concern is there. They're also just trying to manage a snowstorm and move as much snow as they can. So.
And I understand that there's a limited resources and all that stuff, but yeah, some of that little bit in customer service really goes a long way, because guess who they're yelling at?
Oh, I know you guys get a lot of calls, but yeah, we do try to keep the calls down and we try to keep everybody happy, but as you guys know, it's hard to keep everybody happy.
It's not easy, but there are some unique situations and some people that are more particular than others.
Yes, they are.
Next up is Calvin Weatherly, who's our fleet manager, and Cal was just recently promoted from fleet supervisor to fleet manager, I think about a month ago, right, Cal? So, and he's been with the city for 12 years, and he's got a lot of great fleet experience. Anyway, I'll just turn it over to Cal.
Mr. Mayor, honorable council members, Mr. City Manager, I appreciate the value of your time. As I said, I'm Cal Weatherly. I manage our Littleton Fleet. We are the conservator of the City of Littleton Fleet Department. We have 330 pieces of rolling stock, have 3 full-time technicians. In the fleet world, they're pretty busy. Average technician in the real world takes care of about 55 to 60 pieces of equipment, and ours are currently maintaining about 110 each. And that keeps them jumping and running and doing all their good stuff. That being said, we're trying to phase out some of the older vehicles and kind of update our fleet. It's been long in the tooth, so to speak, and we're trying to get that upgraded. We're currently upgrading PD with the final build out of our 23 Tahoes. And I know that sounds kind of funny. I had the 23 Tahoes since June of 23. So it takes, actually June of 22, it takes that long to get them into a professional upfitting shop now. So, we're still in the remnants of COVID, so there's a COVID hangover that will continue now for some years. But everybody didn't have any vehicles, then everybody had 2 or 3 years worth of vehicles that they bought. And there's still the same number of companies that do the same amount of upfitting. Upfitting is the complete package where they build out a unit for us. So PD unit, they go in and strip all the interior out, put all the infrastructure and equipment in it, and then we test it, get it ready to go, and then we put it into service. So we're down to the last three. I've got the chief's new Tahoe in working on it. I got my first of the 24 Tahoes, which are gonna be 9 coming in. I also have a new mobile command post for PD. I'm sure everybody's got a chance to look at it. If you haven't, you're more than welcome to come over to Fleet anytime. As a member of our family, you can come in and we have snacks most days and cold water, and we'll show you, we'd like to give you a
If you
tour.
can change brakes, so much the better. We got a lot of work.
Sure.
Yeah, where is it stored? Which building is it stored in, the command center?
It's actually in the Quonset hut at the Littleton, at our service center.
On Bellevue.
Yep, on Bellevue, and Windermere, right on the corner. And you come over, we'll take you for a little tour, and we have a golf cart, we can drive you around, so it's all good. I also took delivery today, and there's also part of the EV fleet over there, but I took delivery today of 2 brand-new EV Blazers that are gonna be part of our ongoing fleet upgrade from ICE, which is internal combustion engine vehicles, to EVs. That's gonna reduce overall, it's gonna reduce the cost of ownership, due to no fossil fuels. Reduces a lot of maintenance and keeps things on the road. Makes the city look really good, because now we're concentrating on getting rid of greenhouse gas and making a push to better the environment for what we do. I also ordered Mike a new combo truck, a new combo tandem plow truck, which is gonna replace a current existing truck that's semi-old. Sorry, I did that as a pun. I ordered it in January 23. The truck isn't even built yet. So, once again, we go back to you order them and then you just patiently wait for them to get here, so. And then we've got 2 variable message boards so far this year as well for our traffic division. And that's where we're going, and hopefully over the next few years, we can get rid of about 1/3 or maybe a half of our gasoline engines vehicles down here and transition those into electric vehicles. Gonna put in some more charging stations to accommodate them, charging stations up at our Littleton Service Center, and that's kind of where we're going.
How do we dispose of the old ones?
The old ones are auctioned.
They're auctioned.
Yep, they go to a public auction, and then the money is returned back into our fund, our fleet fund. Yeah.
We have loans
Looking to buy a snowplow, are you?
Hey, we're gonna have a bunch of them coming up, so.
Are we starting to fund to replace those batteries on those EV vehicles in 6 years or so?
Nope, those have a lifespan now of 12 to 14 years.
Wow, that's great.
And I have those on an 8-year replacement cycle. So they will have residual value, and we'll get money in return, because if you keep them until they're ready to have a battery replaced, it doesn't make economic sense to put a $18,000 battery in a car that's worth $15,000, so.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, you have to make sure that you calculate that in, and I have that calculated in. And then if anybody wants to know over the course, I just had this pulled up on my phone, and I apologize for doing this because I'm old and my phone doesn't work all that well. So over the course of a lifetime, which is 10 years, for an F-150 Lightning pickup truck, you will save 78 tons of CO2 gas emissions. A Mustang Mach-E, which is their basic sedan, 42 metric tons, and an E-Transit van, you save 55 metric tons of carbon dioxide, CO2. And then also in the course of their life, if anybody wants to know, $27,000 is saved with the pickup, $14,000 is saved with the Mustang, and roughly $20,000 is saved with the E-Transit van. So. Correct, yeah, just gasoline only, that specific was gasoline only. Any questions?
I have a burning question, but it's kind of unrelated. I don't feel like I'll ever have EV people and paving people in the same place. Can I ask it real quick?
Go for it.
Do you have an opinion on EV vehicles being heavier and what that's gonna do to the wear and tear of our roads?
Typically, the roadways, with what little travel we do, is minimal. It affects more of the vehicle than it does the road surface. it's a little heavier, the tires wear a little faster. But overall, with the amount of traffic and the amount of driving lane miles that we drive every year, the wear and tear on the roads will be an absolute minimum.
But a private citizen that has like a Rivian might be doing more damage than our fleet.
I will remain speechless.
That was really smart of you. Well played, Cal.
Sometimes, you know, who was it,
Just as an
Kenny
example.
Rogers? No one to hold him, no one to fold him.
You played that perfectly.
Yes, I will abstain from any further comment on that.
If Brent wants to complain about the EVs on his roadway, this would be the opportunity for you to not do that.
No, I wanna know.
Time will tell. Yeah, I'll just add that, you know, the roadways are designed to carry trash trucks, which are way heavier than any EV that we'll be driving, so.
And there you have it.
Alright, perfect.
So next shift.
The next three. All right, so next up we have Julie Rotter. She's our facilities manager. Julie's been with the city almost 2 years. And about 3 months ago, she was promoted to our facility project manager. She was promoted from facility project manager to facilities manager. Julie might be the first actual facility or certified facilities manager we've ever had. So she brings a tremendous amount of experience from both the public and the private side, so I'll turn it over to Julie.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council for your time tonight. Like Brent said, I'm happy to be the leader of our facilities management division now, a team of 10 folks responsible for all of the Littleton portfolio, which is a total of 38 structures on 8 to 9 campuses, kind of depending on how you count those out. We're working on our inventory of our assets right now. I'm lucky enough to work with the larger team of Public Works. It's the first time I've, in a facilities management role, been part of Public Works, so I learn every day, and we learn from each other every day. My background is vertical construction management and facilities management, and my trade is architecture. So with the team we have now, not only are we going to maintain facilities, but we're doing more planning than ever before, space planning than before. We're getting caught up on a lot of deferred maintenance and putting more PMs and that type of thing in place, as well as longer term plans, short, mid, and long term plans to replace end of life items. Instead of running to fail, our MO here at Littleton for decades has been the buildings tend to run to fail and be crushed by snow before they're built new. That has happened at Bellevue Service Center at least 2 times that we know of. So there's been many activities to plan for the future and build future master plans, but we're really starting to get some traction on that this year. We also, because a lot of our assets are in place already, our furniture and equipment is in place. We do a lot of work right now to accommodate our unprecedented growth that we have. So we don't have a spot to put new folks. So we're doing a lot of one-by-one remedies with furniture and fixtures and doing probably a little more furniture peddling than normally, but we'll be getting out of that cycle here soon. Finding spaces for new positions, especially as new priorities with the city come about, like transportation planners, that type of thing. We're just getting as creative as we can without having additional space to move into. We're just getting creative with what we can do.
Do you have folks sharing space just because of the work from home kind of schedules?
Our Human Resources Department stepped up last year and moved into a smaller space than they had been in and have experimented with rotating the seating and with flex time, and it's going very well for them. And that's the first department I know that had made that a goal and is monitoring how it's going. And I stay in feedback. I get a lot of feedback from Tracy and have been checking in because that's something we can do more of. So in the future and save on space ultimately. in addition to the structures on the 9 campuses, it's somewhere between like I said, we're still trying to asset and inventory our properties, but we're somewhere between 350,000 square feet and 400,000 square feet. And the reason that that's going on is there's things like, I just recently, last fall, learned that we own Carson Nature Center, but South Suburban operates it. And so there's things that come about, and we're learning that there was a roof repair for hail, for example. So we're finding out, I'm digging into the properties, finding the ownerships, and then working with the GIS department on GIS and cartograph department to get ourselves a layer on the map. We don't have the portfolio, the facilities portfolio on our maps yet. We don't have our own layer yet, but we're working to that. Some of the more significant projects I just wanted to share with you that you may be asked about or familiar with are many, several $100,000 going into BAS updates, building automation systems updates to manage the mechanical in the buildings and the upgrading the electrical. We have 3 large elevator upgrade projects happening right now. A lot of fire, life safety, and roof projects on most of our larger buildings underway. So we've followed the plan for a couple of years on Joel Fisher. He's my maintenance manager and project coordinator, and he's done a fantastic job in the background of just staying the course and replacing equipment at the end of life or right before end of life, so we don't have downtime. So he's just organically done that in the background really well. We just launched a study to determine down over at the Bellevue Service Center what we can fit on the 13.883 acres and how much of the city services we can fit on that site. And we're just in the middle of that process and working with Mike, Jen, and Jim on that in future weeks to evaluate some options that are coming about. There's also a high priority on the arts and cultural buildings. So there's a strategic objective that it came out of City Council that we're working very hard on those, all the buildings that are classified as arts and culture. I'm working closely with Tim on understanding the backlog maintenance and making sure the capital plan reflects the maintenance that needs to happen to support the functions that their future visions hold.
No, just along that line, do we own the caboose that's at the Art Depot?
Not the land.
Do we own the?
Caboose itself, yes, and the building itself, but not the land. It's on a state.
Yeah, that, I know, because the
Yep.
Littleton rents the other, that's county land that we, is that the county land?
I think it's
the state land.
Yes, yeah, okay.
A state
But the,
lease.
that's, just thinking of maintenance problems, maintaining a caboose is not the same thing as maintaining a.
No, yeah, our structures are so varied. We have, buildings that are anywhere from 120 years old to 20 years old. The newest building is the Fleet building that Cal was describing. It's already 20 years old, and so it's the last time that capital build has happened here.
Great, thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, and the caboose needs a lot of paint right now. It's shipping, and it's actually, that's on the plan, so the good news is that's some of the things that have been noticed, and they're on the museum's painting plan.
Great.
Yep,
The
and
caboose could go to Fleet.
It could go to Fleet.
we could use it in Littleton Boulevard. Did someone say something
The
about
trolley,
it?
yeah, I brought up the trolley.
Oh, it's caboose, never mind.
That's out of the box thinking there.
We used to have a trolley.
A few more projects to just make note of is the digital signage that you see here, the kiosks, and then the individual name digital signage. We finished that project, we're adding another building right now, but finished that project up around Christmas time last year. And that savings of labor just in not doing paper signs anymore has allowed us to do some other projects. So we're really proud of that particular project. Another project I've been able to put time onto has been the Geneva Lodge exterior rehabilitation, which is, I believe, the first grant we've received here at Littleton for a building project. State Historic Fund, $250,000, and we'll be contributing about $750,000, but we'll get that credit back, the $250 reimbursement. So some really great work on the exterior to keep that building weatherproofed so we don't get any damage to the inside, because the inside's already renovated and so nice.
What's the project or the plan for that building? Are we looking to move engineering out and turn that into a community asset?
Mm-hmm. Just this last week, couple of weeks, we collected the data that we needed to know what office space we need to have at Bellevue Service Center to bring our engineers over to work and get all the public works together. And then per the state historic grant, we are supposed to do everything we can to not occupy it as an office space, but to have it be community focused and a benefit to the community. And so I'm not sure what the use in the future will be, but we're very much moving in that direction and looking to comply with what the State Historic Fund would like to see it be a community benefit. And I don't know what that looks like yet. I just started to mention that to the Community Development Department. So we'll be working on it in the next few months. We know we've had a lot of interest in the courthouse building because the exterior stairs are crumbling off the sides of the building, and there were some letters, I think, that came to city council, but I've been in touch with that group of neighborhood group and keeping in touch with them on progress, and we're moving through the process to get work started on those south stairs, and then we'll move around the entire exterior and also follow up with a full evaluation of the entire courthouse facility. It was handed over to us in 1999 or 2000 after it had been done some renovation, but there's a lot of backlog maintenance and we're a little concerned about it.
Who had it before 2000?
Arapahoe County. And they used a state historic grant to renovate it to the level we see it now. And, minimal work was done on the exterior because they were focused on the interior at the time. So, but we did just recently find the right vendor pool of vendors that does the historic restoration work on the brick and knows those particular specs on the bricks of our buildings and is starting to really be a good partner to us. They're gonna be the ones working on Geneva Lodge exterior. So we also have never really had a drawing library or digital drawings in our facilities, for our facilities in all of our buildings. So that's a really large multi-year project that we are working on. Along with this building here did start to become remodeled when the city council chambers in 2020 and the community room next door and the restrooms and the public space was renovated. But we're looking at the rest of the phases for this building to continue to modernize primarily the mechanical systems so that we can have some more sustainability goals at this facility as well. So I thank you again for your time, and do you have any questions about facilities management?
So
I'll
much
be back.
good information, so much
Thank
good
you.
stuff happening that your team's doing. Thank you. I would ask that our team kind of choose your highlights given time here. So,
Okay.
As we move through.
Highlight.
Quickly but sweetly. So, I'm Art Duran.
I'm next.
Oh, you. I thought it's a utility. Pardon me.
You can go first if you want.
He's really eager.
I'll be brief. You all know Kelsey Stanfield, our manager of grounds, open space, natural resources.
I'm gonna go quick because I have a cough I'm recovering from and I'm afraid I'm going to have a coughing attack. So, our division manages irrigation, turf, open space, horticulture, and forestry, along with a number of community programs and some park planning and project management. Just some stats about our operation. We have 50 irrigated acres, which includes 60 backflows, 30 acres of unirrigated open space, about 4,500 trees that grows as we take on more sections of the Highline Canal, 60 annual flower pots that go out with various perennial beds that are set up year-round, And then all of that is managed by 10 full-time and 3 summer seasonal employees. We also have something like 200 medians throughout the city that we're responsible for as well, but
I did just get an email about the medians and say whoever managed that did a great job, they look great, those.
good, I thought that was gonna be a bad comment.
It was a good
Positive when we ramp up the mowing.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, it was specific with the Xeric, Xeriscape.
Oh, good.
That, not the other medians, but the
Yeah.
ones that have already been dealt with.
Very proud of those ones. That's a big change that we've implemented over the last couple of years. The medians along Littleton Boulevard, if I'm sure everyone's familiar with them. Some of our major community programs that we run, we have 2 community gardens with about 200 members. Those have been in operation for, I think about 20 plus years. One thing we implemented 2 years ago was a composting program for those members. And we partner with a nonprofit in the area that takes care of that. We also have the Spring Tree Program that's been around for a number of years. It's where we sell discounted trees to the community. We sell about 200 every year at cost, just give them back to the community. And then newly this year, we launched our tree subsidy program at the beginning of the year with $20,000. We are actually already out of funds.
Really?
Very successful. We had about 60 applicants we had to tell.
So they trim 5 trees?
Yeah, we had about 60 people on a wait list now for when we re-up those funds, but those primarily went to emerald ash borer treatments since we found EAB last year, so it really took off. And then our newest program, which actually launches June 10th, we partnered with Resource Central to offer discounted turf conversions and native plant heavy garden in a box. So just to encourage people to transition to a more water-wise yard. So yeah.
Someone asked about that this week. Where can people find out about that?
Yeah, so we are still getting our webpage finalized, but everything will go through the Resource Central website. They'll choose City of Littleton as their municipality, and then the discounts available will generate.
Where's the funding for that?
So we got a grant from Resource Central, so we are paying.
What is Resource Central?
Sorry?
What is Resource Central?
They are a nonprofit. They've been managing these turf conversion programs in the Front Range. They're partnered with almost every major municipality in the area actually already doing this. So they match us 50-50 grant funding for that. So
Do you know where their money comes from?
theirs comes through the Colorado Water Conservation funding for turf conversion programs. So it's like a partnership with Denver Water and CWCB, and they got a big source of funding last year, and they've put it really towards this program. So. Some noteworthy projects that we're doing, you're probably familiar with all of these, but upgrading our irrigation systems. They're all like 30 years old and in pretty rough shape. The really big thing we did this year was install a central control system so that we can remote monitor water from anywhere. Our operations supervisor, you might see him walking around with his phone turning water on and off because we've never been able to do that before.
Because you can?
Yeah, just because you can. So we replaced 20 controllers this year and plan to do another big chunk next year. The landscape conversions in the medians, notably Littleton Boulevard. We've done various trial gardens throughout the city, started in partnership with Denver Botanic Gardens, and with the onboarding of a full-time horticulturalist, he's now taking the lead in a lot of those designs and installations throughout the city. Two other big park projects, Reynolds Landing, everyone's familiar with that, but construction on that project is beginning September of this year. And then the Kettering Gallup Master Plan, which will be coming back soon for adoption. So.
Do we have rain sensors on sprinkler systems?
We do. Not on all of them, but everything that's being converted to central control is getting rain sensors and flow meters. So should anything like break overnight, it'll automatically shut off the system.
Any plans to work on the mediums on Bowles?
Bowles, we are holding off anything major until the corridor study. Just because of how narrow that is, I don't know what's going to happen to those medians width-wise, so.
What about mineral medians?
So mineral is prioritized as our next big renovation. Our plan was to start on the furthest east section and chunk it up into thirds moving west. The big sinkhole out there delayed things a little bit, and then there's a pretty big multimodal project coming to that area with the intersection of Mineral Broadway. So we are actually holding off more to then partner with them because there's some stormwater improvements that we want to implement, and there's an opportunity to narrow some of those medians in order to widen some of those trails on the side of the road. So we'd love to just go in and do it, but we want to be a little more holistic about it. And
Would those be xeriscapes or something different?
so I don't think we can do something like Littleton Boulevard just because of how huge they are. I mean, that's a really large area to landscape. We're looking at doing some like sort of rain gardens to utilize flow off the street, just from stormwater. We are talking about maybe doing some public outreach on that, just to see like what people would like to see in the medians. The more narrow they are, the easier it is to like really landscape them because we can maintain them. But some of those medians get up to like 20 feet across, which is quite a lot.
Are you in charge of working with South Suburban? Is that another department?
Yes, I do a lot with them.
How close are we to an IGA with them? Updating the IGA?
I can answer that one. So we are completing over the next few months, next 6 months, that route and renew visioning project, which will really give us and give you a sense for what does our community want in terms of future standards and facilities types, things like that. So when we finish that, then we can kind of move into that service agreement discussion with them. Kelsey is.
I agree.
No way to hold it.
So I deal with South Suburban more operationally day to day, and then some of our park planning projects, so.
So
There I am.
there you are. So next we have Art Duran, who's our utility operations manager, and Art's actually been with the city for 46 years, so he's got a lot of institutional knowledge, so if you have any questions about what happened a long time ago, he knows. So
Yeah,
anyway.
part-time historian.
Holding up better than some of those streets that are.
I'm sorry, that?
You're holding up better than some of the streets that are
Oh,
46
yeah,
years old.
and some of the sewers too. So, I manage the utilities division. What we do is we take care of all the wastewater for the city. I like to think that the sanitary sewer, the storm sewer belong to me, and I let the citizens use them because I've been here so long. But what we do is we use every possible technology that we can get a hold of to evaluate the systems, each one, and we take all of that data, and we're using that data to drive our maintenance programs. Before, it was just me prioritizing a lot of things that needed to be done, and that works somewhat, but when you have all this technology and the ability to do a mass study on the whole system, and you find out all at once what's going on, it's so much better to maintain the system and to address the problems that it has. So one of the things that we use with the assessment is on the sanitary sewers acoustic assessment. And what this is you open 2 manholes that are connected by a line segment. You have a sender and a receiver. They use 5 different tones at precise frequencies. And according to how that frequency reads on the receiver, it'll tell you the capacity of that line. So this is our second year performing that type of project, and we can already see that it's shown significant advantages to keeping our maintenance program ahead of the problems. So we're really proud about that because.
And it sounds like an alien invasion when it's in your neighborhood going on with the beep,
Right.
boop. I'm like,
Yeah.
what is going on around here?
We get calls from people and say, what are these noises coming out of my toilet? We're like, it's an acoustic assessment, that's all it is, don't worry. So, yeah, there's 6 full-time operators, 1 utilities operations supervisor. Now, this is a full complement that we've never had this before. There used to be 3 of us that used to maintain these systems and 2 summer help. How we did that, I don't know. We were reactionary, now we're becoming proactive. And that's what we wanted to keep it as. So we're gathering all the data we can, we're assessing everything we can, and we're going to be putting together programs that are gonna be driving everything we do. So it'll no longer be up to me. It'll be up to these programs and how you prioritize them with engineering in conjunction with utilities and where you're gonna work first. What's the highest priority? What do we need to get done? And then go from there. So, and that's a tricky thing because with sewer lines, you don't know if they're going to fail because of the materials they're made out of. A lot of the city is clay pipe, old clay pipe. Now, we're finding out that some of this clay pipe that's real old is still in really good shape. So they knew what they were doing back then. And so now we have a lot of PVC pipe that's been put in. And so we have less problems in that area, and that's good. But on the storm side, when they put in all the CMPs years ago, it was a good idea. It was a good product. You know, they put it in, it worked. But the thing they didn't think about was what was put on that street and what was going down that drain. So we have 1,373 inlets. So when you collect all that water, and we used to use salts on the streets. So the salt in turn got into the system and it would corrode the bottom of the pipes. Over years, the damage was done, you know, it wasn't forethought enough about to do something about it before it got too bad. So that's what happened with this system, the storm system. But we're calibrizing all the storm drains and we're prioritizing all the work that needs to be done on those also. Now, that's gonna be a 5 and 10 year plan, but it'll be there to execute. So that's pretty much what we're doing. I just wanted to keep it short and sweet. But yeah, that's utilities. And if you have any questions, we'd be free to answer.
Do we reline anymore?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We reline every year. We have a certain budget for relining 8-inch sewer lines. That's the majority of the system. Now you have your collector lines that are larger, from 10 to 24 inch. And we're just finishing up this year on the interceptor that takes everything from the drainage basins down Santa Fe and to the Bi-City treatment plant. And that, we're finishing that up. That's taken about 20 years to complete. So we've got that, we're gonna get that done. And now we're gonna go back and we're gonna televised the whole thing and see how all this rehab is holding up. So we did that first and foremost because that's the most disastrous thing that could happen is for that line to fail. All that sewage go right into the river. So then our secondary is the trunk lines. So we've televised all the trunk lines, so the lines 15 to 24 inches in diameter. We're gonna assess the condition of those and reline those where they need to be fixed. We do some remove and replace, but that costs a lot more. If we don't have to go that route, we won't. And so yeah, that's what we're doing, and we've been busier than we've ever been in all the years that I've been here. And I'm like, where is all this work coming from? And it's just that the system is aging and you need to maintain it, so. That's where utilities is at.
So the one thing I'll point out is that the picture with those guys inside the pipe, that's inside one of our 66-inch interceptor pipes. And so that was our lining project last year, so
That's my graffiti.
So, I mean, we send, I think, 14 million gallons per day to the wastewater treatment plant through our system, so.
And Kyle, I think I know your neighbor. Mike?
That's what I was gonna say, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we had to help him out, and he's made a point to tell us that you're his neighbor.
Oh, did he now? Okay. Story checks out.
So last up, we have Jake Weaver, who's our asset manager, and I'll just let you go, Jake.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, council, for having me today, and, congratulations for making it to the last division. I'm kinda used to being last, my last name is a W, I kind of think he did that on purpose probably, but. So yeah, I am the infrastructure asset manager here at the city of Littleton. I've been here about 8 years, 2 years as an intern and temporary employee, and then 6 years as an FTE. So about 3 years in IT as in GIS, actually specifically is my background, and then the last 5 years here with asset management. So as it says up there, we were established in 2019, so we're the newest division, and we are also the smallest currently with only 2 FTE, and as well as sometimes an intern. We're looking to hire one in the next couple of weeks, and we had 2 last year. So super happy with that program that we're working with, specifically GIS interns. So if you know anybody, feel free to have them apply. So with asset management, it's kind of a vague term, so I kind of wrote down some definitions just to help clarify what that means. This is from the International Organization of Standards. And number 55,000 of all of those standards, that was established in 2014. So first question usually is, what is an asset? And we've mentioned it a couple of times with the different divisions so far. They define it as an item, thing, or entity that has the potential or actual value to an organization. And that usually varies from organization to organization. We are a municipality, so a lot of our assets are, at least with Public Works, they're related to public financially based infrastructure, but some assets can be non-tangible or non-financially based depending on what organization you're coming from. So then the second question is always then, then what is asset management specifically? And that relates to involves the balance of finding of costs, opportunities, and risks against the desired performance of assets to achieve organizational objectives. So one such objective that we have, I've listed up there, is to utilize developed asset inventory to assess risk and long-term capital planning for city infrastructure. I believe that's part of our strategic plan that was presented last time, or last study session, I believe. And so kind of our role is to support every other division in that goal, especially with long-term capital planning for city infrastructure. Depending on what infrastructure it is, a lot of the horizontal infrastructure that we talked about previously, but also some of the vertical infrastructure like facilities, and mobile infrastructure like fleet. So our division specifically doesn't manage fleet or facilities. We usually just work with fleet facilities in their roles, but we do hope to work with them as well as every other division to eventually provide annual reports for everybody, as well as real-time data-driven decisions. So integration with GIS is our primary item, specifically with our asset management software, which is called Cartograph. It's also called OpenGov, because OpenGov is the company that purchased Cartograph. So if you hear either one of those two terms, that's what that means. The asset management system is it's a tool to utilize within the greater asset management realm, where we might have policies, plans, and procedures in place to drive certain decisions. And the system is the data set or the database to house that information for us to make those decisions. The integration with GIS ties it to more of a spatial component. So GIS being geographic information systems. So a lot of the maps or the the spatial data or dashboards that you guys have seen probably throughout these presentations tonight and all those other presentations in the future are usually driven from GIS themselves. So We also integrate with other platforms. One recently was GraniteNet, that's our pipe inspection platform for utilities specifically. So those raccoons you see in the sewer pipes that we've shown before, that's driven from that software essentially. That's not the only thing that's in there, but usually it's not raccoons, right? But yeah. We have data collection and inventory initiatives for 40 asset types currently, 40 plus. I think we add a couple new every year just because what is considered an asset, whether or not it adds actual value to the organization, if it's an infrastructure, public infrastructure that we need to be maintaining. One such example I think was where we've kind of separated out traffic calming infrastructure. So like medians, for example, that Kelsey was mentioning previously, some medians are more designed for traffic calming specifically. So we might convert some of those assets from that asset type to a brand new traffic calming infrastructure asset type. That will certainly help drive decisions with, we're hoping, bike and ped infrastructure as those conversations continue, right? And then some other initiatives and projects that we've been working on, specifically, I guess, the work management standard operating procedures, and then that last item too, kind of skipped one, assisting divisions with work management procedures to track project, work order, and task resources. We work with each of those other divisions kind of to track their daily inputs and how much time, effort, and money is spent towards certain initiatives within their own divisions on a day-to-day perspective. So that way we can make better data-driven decisions in the future to say, yes, this is how much time and money we spent doing it this year versus the previous years versus what we want to, what policies as council kind of drive for the future. So, and then I think that middle one, that Littleton Survey Control Network, is kind of an odd one out that we have, a project that we've been working on for about the last 6 months or so. It's related to survey control with surveyors and GPS ordinances essentially. We don't have an established survey control network at the city of Littleton, and some of our other municipalities in the region do have that, so we've kind of been leaning on their examples and consultant advice to drive home where we should be establishing our survey control standards essentially. So what coordinate system do we want to stay on? What datum do we want to stay on? What will we require surveyors or development review developers essentially to utilize when they submit plans and as-builts back to us? So it's probably more related to that Littleton engineering standards, and to say, hey, why is it called Littleton engineering design standards? Well, that's one of the reasons, is because we want to have a Littleton standard for survey control because it's located here and just here only, so.
Jake and his team are super smart, and he joked about being, last tonight and things, but I would say, I believe, that this work is really at the forefront of where Public Works is going and where all of our operations are going. All of those asset types that Jake talked about are layers that we now can manipulate in that GIS system and build into our work order systems and actually manage our operations.
Asset management's huge for the organization. When Patrick and I started in 2016, that there was like, what's asset management? We didn't know where manholes were, we didn't know this stuff, so it's hard to do a lot of the work.
All that stuff.
Yeah, so.
And to be honest, I was kind of in the same boat from GIS. I knew I had to collect all the manholes for art, but I didn't necessarily know what direction that was kind of going at that time. But yeah, certainly have learned a lot since then to realize what the potential kind of is and what the standards are, not only here, but internationally, since we've been taking training from Australia-based asset management professionals who are kind of the leaders in this right now, so.
Do any council have any questions? Well, I just want to say thank you to the Public Works team. It's great to see all the good work that's going on in the city and put some faces and names to everyone doing that there. So thank you so much for sticking with us here late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more slide.
One more slide.
Couple more. There's a couple more slides.
It wraps everything together.
Perfect.
This is the grand finale. Yeah, so here, I guess this is a preview of the upcoming citywide project dashboard. So this dashboard's for all city projects, and it'll be searchable by department. The dashboard will be updated every month by the project manager, and we anticipate launching the dashboard in Q3 of this year. The dashboard is gonna provide greater transparency to council and to the public. You'll be able to go to the dashboard. So for example, the green circles means that it's on time and on budget. And so if there's a red circle, that means it's either over budget or over time. And so you'll be able to just quickly look at the project dashboard and see if a project is on time and on budget, so.
Cool.
That's
So
great.
exciting.
I get a lot of questions from.
Yeah, this is gonna be a great.
Six more
I
slides.
forward to you and this will save you a lot of time.
Exactly.
Really helpful.
We can send them to the project dashboard in the future.
Dairy Queen's
gonna
close, so this was good.
Thank you, Mayor, thank you, council, for
Yes.
interest in your
Thank
great
you.
questions. Thank you,
for being
team,
here.
this is great. There's so
Thank
much
you.
good work happening, and it's great that we can surface it.
And I just want to say that this is really a great group to work with. I've been here a long time. This is a great group.
Yeah.
We're accomplishing a lot, so.
That's really
That's
nice.
nice. Great, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Any report, city manager?
Nope, thanks, Mayor.
Other than the fact that Dairy Queen's closing. No, thank you.
Mayor, I have something.
Okay.
I just want to give everybody a heads up, as our liaison, to Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Work Group, we've been approached by Hat Force, and they're one of the nonprofits that do some housing for special needs unhoused individuals. So right now they're providing vouchers for folks who are maybe in wheelchairs or have service animals and things like that that aren't accommodated in traditional shelters. They're looking for permanent space. They're asking for a grant for Community Services Development Block Grant, and they want a letter of support for our council. So in our materials next week will be kind of that letter. Love you all to look at it and then kind of sign on to it if it makes sense. I think from my perspective, it makes sense. It's just saying, yes, we want this service provided and we want to be able to give them some permanent space. And they want to do it here in Littleton. So that'll be in your packets next week.
We wanna give them permanent space?
No, it's a letter of support for a grant.
So they can get them, they have support from the county.
Gotcha.
It would just be passed through for the federal money.
The first time Gretchen's extended the end of the meeting closer to 10 o'clock. Clearly it was important, so.
All right, we're adjourned.